honesty. Can you say honesty? Honesty. Can you say honesty? Honesty. Can you say honesty? Honesty. Can you say honesty?
Yes, my people. Good afternoon and welcome to Reason with Ratigan with your host and family member, Wil, the Rebel Ratigan on Reggae Global Radio. Well, family, thanks for the support, the constructive criticisms, and the comments. I welcome them as I seek to be more successful in the selection, the tone, and the tenor of my messages. Over the past week, some of you have challenged me in a very direct manner. And most of the points you raised, to be truthful, they're valid. I will continue to receive and review your input because, in the end, they will make me a better messenger and inspiration. So again, thanks, and you have my sincere thanks. Now, you see a new background behind me, right? Some people that complain about the old background, but we're not change the garrison thing because that's who we are, right? But we can use it as an inspiration to reach higher heights. And so the background I had previously was just a general background. But this background, my place this. This is a street in a place called Cuba in a Waterhouse. And I used to live about 2 blocks from this street. So this is a new background. We may alternate between this and the other one because the picture on this one it's not as clear as the other one, but it delivers a very, very powerful message. At least it gives me inspiration when I start my program. Well, as when we talk about the government, and I've said it many, many times, I don't care about parties and politics. I care about people, policies, and production. And once the elections are over, my ultimate aim is to support whoever is in charge, whoever the government is. And I feel it's my responsibility to criticize when necessary. And people shouldn't be afraid of criticism. They should take it in the light that this will probably make them better. And that's what we're trying to do. We're striving to make the government a more responsive government. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way because some people, they find it insulting, they find it degrading that you would challenge them. But as taxpayers, as voters, as Jamaicans, we do have that right to do so, and we should continue. Now, again, the government continues to be unaccountable in many areas. Promises are still not being kept. Excuses abound. Acrimony and chaos rule certain spaces. Poor people are getting even poorer than before. Never thought that would have even be possible. While the rich are getting even richer than before. Our resources, including our beaches, are basically handed to others without real benefits being realized by the masses. That's what we're going to talk about this evening. A significant amount of our people continue to live below the poverty line. And most of us who are employed are not given a livable wage. And more of us are eating poorly. Little wonder that our population is experiencing severe medical issues related to poor diet. Medical care and facilities, in the main, are promised but yet to be delivered. Long wait, poor service, few pieces of equipment to adequately service the population, etc. You know that things are bad when the PM publicly criticizes his Minister of Health and Wellness and the minister himself. It was only late last year that the PM said at the JLP conference that he personally received many complaints about the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And he concluded the sentence by saying that the complaints were justified. Think about that. Prime Minister gets up, make a statement about the Minister of Health and Wellness and said, look, I'm receiving complaints personally, and the complaints are justified. We continue to hear promises about new and refurbished medical facilities. But given the exodus of medical professionals, where will the staff come from? Not to mention cost overruns, etc. For some medical services, including major surgeries, you have to purchase your own medical supplies because the government won't. And I know this for a fact. Public corruption is rampant, and even the PM has, for now, escaped justice because a prosecutor with the evidence to prosecute declined to do so based on abuse of process. What does that mean? Means that the investigation took too long in this instance, which is ridiculous given the fact that there is no statute of limitations for corruption in Jamaica. So you can bring the proper authority, whether it's the DPP or the corruption prosecutor, can bring this action against whomever. No time limit. Crime, particularly murder, has become normalized to the point that a single murder doesn't cause our eyebrows to raise, except if it's an influential member of society, and that rarely happens. Double murders, triple murders, they get our attention. Jamaica, we continue to be in a sad, sad state. Where is the murder reduction statistic we're supposed to realize as a result of Plan Secure Jamaica and operations like Operation Relentless? Remember the government, since 2016, 2017, they've been talking about Plan Secure Jamaica and the results that it would yield. And here we are. Crime statistics must show a reduction. But beyond that, we must feel safe before we can claim victory in the battle against crime. Not the war. We're far, 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 far from winning this war. And remember that. They must not only give you the stats, but there must be a sense of safety and security and peace. And they came out with some stats the other day saying that the murder rate is, I don't know, way below what it was last year. And if you did a poll and ask people, how do you feel? How do you feel? They're still going to tell you, we don't feel safe and secure. Where is the promised affordable housing, jobs paying livable wages, real economic gains, and an improved quality of life for our people? We know and we understand that it's going to take time and money to correct society's ills and deficiencies. And it's also going to take a change of heart and change of mind. It's been 7 years and billions of dollars, and in many cases, we're worse than before. The wait for elections may be long, but it won't be forever. And while we wait, there are some things we can do. For example, we can seek information via the Access to Information Act. We can protest, but unlike others, I'm telling you, protest peacefully and lawfully. Go get your permit. Meet as a community with your MP and let your voices be heard. Or you can file lawsuits like the man in the wilderness, Mr. Wayne Lonesome. He did it about a week and a half ago. And now you force the government to respond to a PR campaign against it. And you can also hold the government accountable. But again, what we're preaching, what we're teaching, what we're calling for, peaceful, lawful action. So we seek change. And part of the change we seek is educating our people with the goal of empowerment. This is more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. As I said last week, it's about critical thinking and resolutions. Again, listen to the politicians attentively, but pay close attention to what's going on around here. Why? Because programs like this program, Reason with Ratigan, are where we pick the proverbial sense out of nonsense. And before I forget, the thousands of you watching the program, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. The producer and the owners of the radio station, they wanted me to make that public announcement. And you should, for good reason. Today, we are going to reason about a significant topic. And as usual, please join and reason with us via phone. The number is 667-369-8569. 667-369-8569. Oh, they're saying that my volume is low. Hold on a second. Let's see. Or you can hit us up in the chat room. Yeah, that sounds better. Regarding our chat via phone, thanks to all of you for the increasing number of telephone calls. Much appreciated. However, in order to streamline the program today and going forward, I'm going to set aside 10 minutes or so, beginning at approximately 4:30 Eastern Daylight Saving Time. That's 3:30 Jamaica time, and I think it's 9:30 UK time. I'll set aside that period to take telephone calls. And we'll also have another telephone break at 5:30, which is 4:30 Jamaica time, and I think 11:30 UK time. Reminder, don't forget to tune in to Reggae Global Radio, this station tonight at midnight until 2, and relax with the Rebel. It's a program designed to take you on a musical journey to release stress, lift your spirits, and bring back some memories. Tonight's theme is slow jams. For the last couple of weeks, I think we had cool jazz. The selection tonight is fantastic. So make it a date and don't be late. For today's program, I will be joined by a fan favorite, Herb Nelson Jr., a man who is well versed in national security and crime issues affecting Jamaica and the greater Caribbean. And we will be reasoning with Dr. Devon Taylor, president of the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement, otherwise known as JABEM. Today's discussion is going to be riveting and informative for all of us. The veil will be lifted from our faces, and we will see eye to eye, regardless of whether we're PNP, JLP, UIC, rich or otherwise, black or otherwise, university graduate or otherwise, garrison or otherwise, employed or otherwise. You catch my drift. There are so many things working against our unity, but this issue will easily galvanize us as a people and force the politicians to account and act in our best interest. The issue, family, is our ability or inability to access one of our most prized natural resources, our beaches. Shout out time. Continued prayers and blessings for Mama Eileen, Papa Trevor, Ma P and family, Mrs. Nelson, Bonnie Jump and Sassy Diva. Big shout out to the Reggae Global family, the Meadowbrook crew, the Firehouse crew, the Rallington crew, Admiral Donovan from Rallington, still so, and the crew of hard-working, dedicated, honest members of the JCF and JDF. Update. As you may recall, I requested several documents from the Jamaican government concerning the private financing of Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith's unsuccessful bid to become the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. And I also sought documents regarding the 2.6 million pounds of high-grade fertilizer that Morocco gifted to Jamaica. I filed for the fertilizer documents about 112 days ago, and the private financing documents about 121 days ago. Why do I mention these periods? Because the law says that the government must respond within 30 days after receiving the request. So I filed a request 112 days in one instance, 121 another instance, and the law says 30. Nobody no respond. And depending on the reason or not providing the requested information, there are fines and jail term consequences. So depending on the reason why they haven't responded, and I don't think there's any good reason, but I'll continue the story and tell you what happened yesterday. I was told yesterday that one ministry did not receive my request. Even though the email address was given to me by a government official, the email was not returned, and the law states that if the communication is delivered to the wrong person in the government, it's the wrong person's obligation to read the email and forward it to the right person. That didn't happen. But we know that both emails were sent and both emails were opened. The second ministry is yet to respond, and the wait continues. Well, family, I'm excited to have as our guest today Dr. Devon Taylor. And I didn't tell you this at the top of the broadcast, but I'm a little bit under the weather. But this topic, I mean, wild horses could not have kept me away from doing the program today. And as I said before, it doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're a Jamaican. Doesn't matter what your political affiliation, your economic position, your educational status, doesn't matter. This is one issue that will bring us together, should bring us together, must bring us together as a people because it affects all of us as Jamaicans. I spoke to Dr. Devon Taylor this week several times and found him to be knowledgeable, passionate, experienced, and approachable about this beach, river, sea issue. You know, I have fond memories of my family going on community trips to Port Henderson and Gunboat beaches. This is eons ago. Those were the days when Jamaicans were really united and violence was a distant threat. The last time I passed both beaches, they seemed to be poorly maintained and in disrepair. In my preliminary discussions with Dr. Taylor, he educated me concerning the many and varied issues associated with this issue, and I'm sure he'll do the same this afternoon. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Taylor. Let me switch him over here. Yes, Dr. Taylor, welcome to Reason with Ratigan, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Greetings, Ratigan, and greeting to all of your listeners, both in Jamaica and in the diaspora.
Let me put, yeah, I couldn't hear you a while ago, so I have to put on my
I
headphone.
was just, saying greetings to you and greetings to your all your listeners
Okay,
within the diaspora and in Jamaica.
okay. Dr. Taylor, the people, I found out about you last week, so I suspect that most people, they've never heard of you, they've never heard about you, and the same for Jabim. So what I'd like you to do at this point is just tell us who you are, where you're from, your occupation, and then we'll dive into the issue.
So here's what I'd like to do before I define myself, because this issue that we're going to discuss right now is steeped in the immorality of colonial England that continues in Jamaica today. And before I start speaking about myself, I would want to say to the people that following the emancipation, from slavery, colonial England acted aggressively to prevent land ownership by the descendants of enslaved people. There was no reparation, compensation that was given for the abuse and the injury that was done to African by England, despite them doing that for former slave owners. So one of our great professors in the Caribbean, Sir Hilary Beckles, stated that freedom began with the fear of homelessness and the certainty of landlessness. So the access to beaches and the use of the sea is an internal reparation issue in Jamaica that must be addressed. And to really add substance to that, we got emancipation in Jamaica, emancipated in 1838. And in 1836, England's Secretary of State issued, an edict to the state colonies them. And what they said that in that declaration, that the government in the colony should implement a policy, right, that would prevent the occupation of any crown land that vested in the crown by any person, not possessing any kind of title, or they would put a price on it so high that they can't afford it. Without any capital, the former enslaved ones could not own land. So we, the descendants of enslaved Africans, are victims of colonial era law. And the Beach Control Act really is a colonial era act. So what I would say right now, who am I? All right? So I am nature, and nature have the right to exist. I am the descendants of enslaved Africans living on that farmer slave plantation. I am that child that lives across the road or on the hill that can see the sea but have no right to access it to bathe in it, to fish in it, to walk along its shores. I am that person whose livelihood is affected, and I depend on the sea. I am that person who need the therapy of the sea but cannot get it. I am that spiritual person that cannot meditate along the shores of the sea and I can't baptize my people because I can't access it. I am that Rasta man who can't embrace my inner peace because I cannot access that sea. I am that returning resident from the diaspora who can't bathe in my childhood beach anymore. I am that landless Jamaican without the rights to access my beach and my sea. Yes, Ratigan, I am Devon Taylor from Steertown, St. Anne. I am a research scientist. I am a graduate of the City University of New York, where I receive a master's degree. I am a graduate of City University of New York, where I receive a PhD in cellular molecular immunology. I am, a graduate of University of Pennsylvania, where I did my postdoctoral training in the School of Medicine. And I am a pharmaceutical drug development research scientist studying in practicing drug development in the United States. I am just the messenger sounding this alarm that Jamaicans are struggling to reclaim their birthright, right? Asking for general rights of access to all our beaches and rivers, to push back at this apartheid-like model that exists in Jamaica with government complicity. So we need to fight against beach access discrimination. And so in this case, I am Jabem.
Okay. Well done, sir. Well done. Nice introduction. Well, where were you born in Jamaica and where did you grow up in Jamaica? Is it the same place? And tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up in Jamaica.
Yeah, so as I said, I'm from Steertown, St. and we're just a mile off, the Caribbean Sea. We're sandwiched right between St. Anne's Bay and Ocherius. So, most of my formative years were spent, in Steertown, roaming all the beaches, all the way from St. Anne's Bay into Ocherius, all the rivers, roaring rivers, the Bogue rivers, all the rivers that lead into Dunn's River, lead into Little Dunn's River. That was the whole ecological space that, I grew up in with all my friends, from Steertown.
And what caused your passion? And I mean, you mentioned some things a while ago, but I guess the question I'm asking is when did you develop this passion for this particular issue? Was it in Jamaica while you were growing up? Was it in New York? Was there a triggering event? What caused it?
Yeah, there was a triggering event, but as I said, I'm a avid user of the beaches, avid user of the rivers, and I went to high school in Wormwood up in Christiana. So when I stayed away from these spaces, it would really affect my meditative space. So my mom passed away, but I mean, may her soul rest in
My
peace. When I come
condolences.
home, she could not control me and she would actually leave me alone. I would just leave the house all day, don't come back until night. And it's just beaches and rivers, what I mean? So it has always been a space that where I centered myself, where I find my inner peace. And so, the triggering event is having studying in the US here and going back home and just, observing that I'm losing access to one more beach, where Rio sits right along the Ocherius corridor. That was our playground. Many of my brethren, them, Jeffrey Walker, Roland Walker, I mean, Ringo McBean, all of us used to just roam those spaces and we just start losing access to them. Um, and so, the icing on the cake was our most beloved Mama Bay Beach that, history lends itself that Steertown was a farmer, one of the first free slave villages in Jamaica, and by extension, that Mama Bay Beach is an extension of the Steertown community that we've been using for more than 100 years. We were aggressively pushed off that beach, with private securities and government JCF forces push off the community out of that space. And that was the straw that broke the camel back, because now the whole coast for Steertown and Mama Bay was landlocked. We had nowhere to go. So myself, no beaches to go to. The youth across the street, no beaches to go to. The fisher folks, them lost. You know what I mean? Some of them walking 3, 4 miles to get into the sea. Some have to be illegally crossing properties to get to the to beaches. So it becomes a problem. So I said, no, this cannot continue. So I immersed myself in trying to understand how can this be? How can we be on an island and becoming landlocked? And so I start researching laws around what empowers the private owner, what empowers the government to really allow these things to happen. And those were the triggering event. And subsequently, the proliferation of it started before Mama Bay in 2020. But we have seen this proliferation across the island of just development. You just look at Montego Bay, and ask folks in Montego Bay of all those beaches that exist, from Iberia Star to Cornwall beaches, all these spaces just start disappear, So the people of Jamaica have been really suffering from land dispossession and beach dispossession. And so I could not stand by anymore. So a group of us kind of like just start reason within, the confines of Steertown, what we can do, and Jabem was born out of that kind of a reasoning to really set something up to really try to really secure back access to all these, ecological spaces.
All right. Um, when was Jabem born?
Yeah, 2020 Jabem, 2021 Jabem come into the consciousness. And in 2022 we registered Jabem as an NGO in Jamaica. And we are still going through charitable status, but we are a fully registered NGO there. So that's all we come together to really decide that we need to do something around not just liberation of the space, but also an environmental protection component that we built inside here. And we could discuss that as we go through the program, but it's what we call the rights of nature, where nature has the right to exist. And I think the beach ecosystem, as we see the massive commercialization that is happening now, where you go in, you push down everything that you see on the beach. You take down every trees, you destroy the habitat for all the birds, all the turtle lay in sight, the whole thing. You just need to just go on Google Maps and just look along the coast and you will see. If you go on jabem.org, you will see we have some aerial shot as to what kind of a sprawling commercialization Montego Bay has become, Negril has become that, Ocherius has become that. The whole vegetative nature of the coast has been destroyed. So the rights of nature has been violated. Once you violate the rights of nature, you're actually kind of setting up yourself for doomsday. So we really think that component must be built in there. So while Jabem is, fundamentally rooted in regaining rights of access and reform in the coastal laws of Jamaica, we are deeply rooted as an environmental organization in the rights of nature.
Okay. Well, before I go any further, let me just tell you that you are family, and so consider this like a family gathering. With you and the thousands of our listeners and me and viewers and me. And so whatever you feel like saying, my brother, we're family. Just say it, because this is a significant issue and we have to discuss it fully. Just a reminder that for the folks calling, you need to call at 4:30 or 5:30. We're not going to take calls during the program. We don't want to interrupt the flow. No, Devon, the Prime Minister gave a speech last week. And was it last week? Or this?
Yeah, budget speech. Yeah.
Last week. And I'm going to read to the family members what was said and have you to comment on it because it caused you to send out a press release. Now, here's what was said in the Prime Minister's budget speech on Monday, March 20th. It was this week. He said, no, actually last week, March 16th. March 16th. I stand corrected. He said, all Jamaicans must have access to our beautiful beaches. This is without question. Now, right away, I have a problem with that. If you're saying all Jamaicans must have access, it sounds like all Jamaicans don't have access. And that's why it's an issue, because the Prime Minister is not going to go up there and take up time, talk foolishness, or talk about things that exist. He's going to, are things that are not an issue. He's going to go up there and talk about things that are issues and how he plans to fix them, or his government plans to fix them. So that's the first thing that caught my eye when he said all Jamaicans must have access to our beautiful beaches. This is without question. Big problem right there. He went on to say, these beaches must be of a good quality and properly regulated to ensure safety, security, economic livelihood, and enjoyment for all citizens. Our beaches are not only a source for recreation, but a significant element of our tourism and the fisheries sectors. Not a problem. When you single out those two and say it is a significant element of tourism and fisheries, but you don't mention recreation, where people can go and swim and have a good time and do picnicking. I have an issue with that. He went on to say, the development of the beach access and management policy is advanced, and the document will be ready for tabling within the first quarter of the new fiscal year. Now, another problem with that. In January 2017, it was reported in the Gleaner that the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation has completed work on a beach access and management policy that outlines a clear framework for the sustainable management of our beaches, with special emphasis on the important issue of public access. Now, this was 2017 that it was done, and I believe it was presented to the public in 2020. And now we're hearing in 2023 that it will be tabled. It's a long time. But we're patient people, so we'll accept it. But, so Devon, talk to me about this speech. Put aside everything I just said and just pretended I read it without any commentary. What's troubling to you about that speech? Or that segment of his speech?
Yeah, man, that is just a disingenuous statement that is highly misleading. You catch it right, correctly, that to talk about that Jamaicans must have access really imply that we really don't have any access. So let me read from the Beach Control Act of 1956 as interpreted in several government documents, including the Beach Access Management Policy of 2020 that was quoted inside here. It says, in Jamaica common law, the public has no general rights of access to the foreshore, except to pass over it for the purpose of navigation or fishing. There is therefore no general right of bathing or to walk along the foreshore, except where it's acquired by custom or prescription. Nor is there any general right to fish, right, except provided in Section 3 of the Beach Control Act. All right? So there's no, the Jamaicans really have no general rights. And what that means is that to access the beach and use the sea, you must get permission to do so. Unless you have been using it for a minimum of 20 years, then that guarantees you a customary right that you can continue to use it, but you have to go into the courts for recognition. So what the Beach Control Act has done, it created a framework to block Jamaicans, don't give them this full right to use the space, but give them a rights by permission. So what the Prime Minister is saying that we must have access, because we don't have the access, and they recognize that we have to get permission to use it. So a lot of Jamaicans think that you can't just freely, walk over people's land and go to the beaches, or you have a government land, you can just walk over it. No, you actually need permission to do so. And what we have been doing customarily in Jamaica for many beaches is that we've been accessing them for more than 20 years, and nobody no really trouble us. But right now, what they're doing now, they're troubling us, because they're saying that, no, we're selling these lands, we're drawing these wire fence, and then you can't use them anymore. And because the Beach Control Act structured that way, they can block you. And the only way to gain the access there, you have to now go in the courts and challenge them in the courts. So we're doing that in Mama Bay, and we're doing that in Bob Marley Beach out there. because they're trying to block that access through land rights. So when he says, that we must have access, yes, we need general rights of access, and it is in his power to do so. So since the last 7 years, my brother, what the government of Jamaica could do, because they have the Land Acquisition Act, they can create easement at their will. No problem. The government have the power to really just says that we need my people to access the beach from this point, and we need to put an easement there. They can do that. They have never done that in the last 7 years. As a matter of fact, I can't remember when was the last time the government or any government of Jamaica have created easements for Jamaicans to access the space. So they could have done that, and they have not done that. So what he's saying that is not in alignment with what's on the ground, because we have seen and we have known that government-owned property has been transferred to private interests. And I can speak about a massive piece of property that's right next door to Old Fort Beer, heading into Ocherius, that was transferred to Czech, which is the Chinese Arbor Engineering Company that's building the highway across Jamaica. So what that means is that Jamaica, we have now lost access to that beach, all right? So we are losing access because every piece of land that adjoins the ocean, that when it gets sold, the people are blocked out of it. And because the laws of the country says that you don't have a right, your right is based upon permission, okay? You don't have that general right, then you lose access. Okay, you notice he mentioned inside here that, beaches are a significant element of tourism and fishing. Now, in that same document that he said is being advanced, they propose that there'll be no new fishing beach, but they will decrease the number of fishing beaches in Jamaica. So that is why this is also disingenuous, because if it's significant to the fisheries sector, which if run properly, if monies are invested in the fishing sector, it can outrival tourism hands down. Remember, the earth is 70% water, and most of the people on the planet actually get their food from the sea. If you structure a proper fishing industry in Jamaica, you outrival, tourism. But they're saying that it's significant to fisheries, but you are saying that in your document, you're going to decrease the number of fishing beaches. You're saying that also we must have a right, but in that same document, you say Jamaicans will only have qualified rights. No, Ratigan, what is qualified rights? Qualified rights means that you really need you need permission from the next guy. So if the tourist industry, if the private owner, whose property adjoin the ocean, right, says that you cannot come there, then you can't go there. Your right needs to be qualified by that owner of that space. And they have a tourism model in Jamaica that basically says that Jamaicans cannot coexist on beaches with tourists. You don't see that in a Jamaica. All hotels shut them gate, lock them fence, run them wall, and no Jamaicans can just walk and says, I'm going to the beach. So mama and papa and them 2 children, them go down there Friday, Sunday evening, go on take a dip. Them can't go through the hotel gate because it's private property and they can't cross over the land. So if you are serious about rights of Jamaicans and general rights of access, then what you have done would have repealed and replaced the Beach Control Act and institute a modern framework that gives Jamaicans general rights of access. You would have tell tourist hotels that, listen, you can't block Jamaicans, okay, because they have the right to pass over the land, just as all them do in Barbados, Bahamas, Cayman, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Nevis, all these other Caribbean countries, regardless of hotel dear or not, the sentences of those, Aruba, even Mexico that might rival us where violence is concerned, the rights of the citizens to access the beach is preserved in many of those constitutions. It is written in the Mexican Constitution. You can't stop them. We don't do that. So when time, our Prime Minister opened his mouth and talk about, say, we must have access, he has not done anything proactively to guarantee that. And at that, we look upon to say, what have you done proactively to do so? Because the beach access management plan is not the solution. And I tell you this, I have in my hand right now a beach access management plan from 2000. So it's 23 years ago they're trying to do this. The same recycled through one other administration after another administration, and they can't get it done. So they're lying. They're lying to us.
All right, hold on.
If we don't, got you.
No. Finish the sentence. Sorry.
No, if we don't leverage this and open this up to the Jamaican people, because I know many of my brothers and sisters out there says, boy, my go beach and them can't stop me once me come in from the sea. No. NEPA has granted more than 275 beach license across Jamaica. What a beach license does, it gives the operator of that license the right to exclude whoever they want to exclude from the space. That's what it does. All of the hotels in Jamaica have license that exclude you from their beaches.
All right, you've given us a lot to unpack there, and quite interesting, quite informative. Let me go back to a couple of things, because I did some research as well, and here's what I found out. It says here that there is no legal concept at common law. There is no legal concept of what is colloquially known as a beach. There is no legal concept. They said the foreshore is that portion of the land adjacent to the sea that lies between the high water and low water marks, being alternately covered and uncovered as the tide ebbs and flow. So that strip that we call a beach, they call it the foreshore, right? And in Jamaica, they said that it's relatively narrow, depending on the topography, but it's around 5 to 6 feet.
Yes.
That's what they say here. No. You mentioned, we have to give our people the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding. So, we have to do our research and come to them correct. Because we want, whenever people go out and start making an argument, we want them to make it intelligently and constructively. We don't want them go out and say, maybe the years are this, no. We'll give them page and number and verse and chapter so that they can look at it themselves, so that when they speak, they can speak intelligently. Now, there is something, and you mentioned it a little bit, but I'll go a little bit further into it. It's the Prescription Act of 1882, long time ago. And it says here, in paragraph 2, I'll read it and I'll translate, because it's in Old English. It says, when any profit or benefit or any way or easement or any water course, or get this, or the use of any water, a claim to which may be lawfully made at the common law by custom, prescription, or grant, shall have been actually enjoyed or derived upon, over or from any land or water of Her Majesty the Queen, or of any person, or of any body corporate, by any person claiming right thereto. And here's the key part: without interruption for the full period of 20 years, the right thereto shall, subject to the provisions hereinafter contained, be deemed absolute and indefeasible. Now, ask yourself the question: what do absolute and indefeasible, what do they mean? Well, I have it right here. Essentially, it means that it is not subject to change. Absolute, free from imperfection, complete, perfect, not mixed or adulterated, complete. And here is indefeasible, not capable of being annulled or voided or undone, an indefeasible right. So what that says, based on this Prescription Act, that if you were around or going forward, if you occupy a piece of land, or you use water, they're talking about beaches, for 20 years or more, and you can prove it in court. It doesn't have to be you, it could be your descendants, but they can prove that mama, grandfather, great-grandfather, everybody used that. That right is absolute and indefeasible. So if you can show that your ancestors used that beach, no law coming after this should supersede it. But then they came up with something. Remember, this is 1882. They came up with something called the Beach Control Act of 1956. And yes, it does. I mean, when you read these things, I mean, you're amazed. You know, if you, it says that if you're a fisherman before 1956 and you used to use a certain piece of land, then nobody can stop you from using it, right? So what I found, and I've read through this thing, the 1956 Act, what I found is that there are provisions in it that are not enforced. And there are provisions in it that should not be enforced based on the Prescription Act of 1882. Now, you said, Devon, that the minister, yeah, him can just make a change and allow people to have free access to the beach. And you're absolutely correct. And how do I know that? It's in the same Beach Control Act of 1956. It says right here on under the section Protected Areas, Chapter 7, subsection 4, it says the minister may, if he thinks fit, grant to any person applying therefore in such form and subject to such conditions as the minister may think fit, a license to carry on in any area defined in an order made under this section any prohibited activity specified in such order. So all the things that they say you couldn't do under this, you have to get permission and blah, blah, blah. The minister has the right under the same act to say, by stroke of a pen, say, I'm gonna give you a license. And Sandals, the hell with you. This man, Devon, is gonna have right to Devon or a community of people. Or, by extension, Jamaicans can use this piece of property. So, people, I'm urging you, go ahead and look up the Prescription Act of 1882, 25th of February, and look up the Beach Control Act of 1956. So when the Prime Minister came out and said, all Jamaicans must have access, and blah, blah, give them access. Give them access. You're exactly right. Go ahead, my brother.
Power, and this is why it's disingenuous that they make these kind of statements when they're trying to get vote, and they'll come out and they'll say, okay, we did this and we did that. Now you read from 1882. Now we ask the question, which beach in Jamaica has not been using since we become emancipated? Really and truly. We're using the entire coastline of the country from such time. So that's why the whole thing is just crazy, right? And this is why the Beach Control Act of 1956 coming, So you see, in 1954, fishermen start feeling squeezed because hotel business start grow, and all of the farmer, colonialists them start take over all of the beachfront property. They control them from in the first place, but they start further tighten them rein on it and displace folks. So people start squeal, and I said, no, it's wrong. This is from 54 when they put this whole beach commission together to draft this, So this is before independence. So who draft this document? Okay, draft it in the interest of the colonialists. Because if you read section 4 in that same document, it tells you that any person who owns property that adjoins the sea have the right to do whatever they want to do with it. Okay? All right? So, I mean, while they said no one shall be deemed to have any rights in or over the foreshore, okay? Any person who really own beachfront property, all right, as it says inside here, look at it. It says, any person who is the owner or occupier of any land adjoining any parts of the foreshore, and any member of his family and any private guest of his shall be entitled to use the part of the foreshore adjoining his land for private domestic purposes, that is to say for bathing, fishing, or other likes of recreation. They never mention that for the regular person. They mention it for the person who owns the land adjoins the sea. So the Beach Control Act of 56 was not written to protect the people of Jamaica. It was written to protect the ruling colonialist class. And that's a problem. Okay, it needs to go. So when also you read about the minister, too much power is given to the minister at the stroke of a pen to do what he feels like. And so we see now where the ministers in Jamaica are now being lobbied by the powerful, the oligarchs and the hotel industry. So they're being literally controlled by the lobbyists. And this is why since 2000 or 1998, when NEPA and the different government administration trying to craft a new beach access management policy for the country, they can't break it because the hotel industry and the private villas and all of the owners of these spaces tell them, say them can't do it. They cannot do it. And I'll tell you this, because we went to the United Nations to present our case that this current law was discriminating against Jamaican, because it is discriminatory, because it gives one set of Jamaican who own property before the foreshore the rights to really enjoy and do everything that they want. And then another group of Jamaican, mostly of lower socio-economic status, which is mostly fall within the 96% or 97% of us who are descendants of enslaved Africans who cannot, use it. I would say it's discriminatory and it needs to go. The government position was that they cannot, mandate, people to cross over private property to get to the sea because it would lead to a constitutional crisis. Are you kidding me? What kind of constitutional crisis? You have all the tools in the toolbox in the country. Land Acquisition Act. When you're ready to build your road, you take where people land. When you're ready to build any new, commercial park, any kind of economic zone, if it's sit down within people land, you take it. But when it comes to say, I will ask you to create an easement over your property because I have the power to do so, you can't do it because it's going to lead to constitutional crisis. Them just finding words to further, bolster their position because they're not willing to do it. So all these statements are disingenuous, they are misleading because the power sits in the government of Jamaica to do whatever they want in the interest of the people, and they're not doing it. And that is why Jabim is saying, it is discriminatory. You can't do that. You cannot block us from the natural resources of the country. You don't give us the right to bathe. You don't give us the right to swim. You don't give us the right to walk along the foreshore. And you have the nerve to actually write that in your beach access and management policy. And you say you want to change it, then just change it. We don't require no whole heap of conversation around here, so just do it.
Right, because you have the power to do it. But
you have the power to do it.
But in addition to that, I'm going through the Beach Control Act and under the section licenses for use of the foreshore and floor of the sea. If I'm a hotelier, based on this act, I could just put up my fence, right? Without a license, put up my fence, do my thing. And even if it's determined that I'm in violation of the act, you know how much the fine is? You know what the fine is? Fine is $20. 20 Jamaican dollars per day. Right? So if I'm bringing in tourists by the droves, one tourist can pay for, 3 years or whatever for that. So I just continue doing it. You're absolutely correct. This thing, it's ancient. It's ancient, and there are contradictory provisions in it, and I agree with you. They need to come up with a new one. But like you said, what's taking them so long? And it's successive government. It's not just one government. It's successive government.
Yes.
And all right, you know what? We're coming up on a commercial break, but we're just gonna go through because I have a dear friend of mine who, and Kevin, maybe you can help out. They said that whenever they go to when they go to the commercial break and we continue on the streaming section, that they have a hard time hearing because of they're still hearing the commercials in the background. I don't know if you can fix that. And then Herb texted me a while ago, and I don't know if you can get him on, but if you can, please do so. Let me throw something out to you, Virgin. The Jamaican government, I read something where they said said that they have this provision whereby they can lease out public beaches, right? And they said within the last several years they've leased out 2 to private owners. One of them, I believe, is Puerto Rico. And why do I mention Puerto Rico? Because the gentleman who has the lease, and I think it's like I think he told me it's a 99-year lease because I had a conversation with him when he was developing the beach. he invested millions and millions of American dollars in this project. And it's now come to fruition. It's open for business. The problem is that ordinary Jamaicans are excluded on some days. You have to pay to go in, you know. But there are some days when you cannot, even your money won't help you because it's set aside for some days. And this is what I've read. And unless somebody's going to correct me and say, no, 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 you have it all wrong. This is what I've read. This is what I've heard. That there are certain days that the beach is open only to tourists, not to Jamaicans. And I saw a video where a Jamaican man and his family, I think they were trying to get in and they said, no, you can't come on because today is not your day. You know, you have to come back another day. The problem is that ordinary Jamaicans are excluded on some days. So let me ask you this. What's your take on that?
No, I mean, you see, what Puerto Rico is a private establishment, right? Now, the private establishment have the right to refuse anybody who they want to refuse, from their establishment. And as long as, I guess, it's not violating our Charter of Rights.
Let me stop you 1 second right there, my brother. Let me just welcome Herb Nelson Jr. to the program. Herb is, as I mentioned before, well versed in the issue of all kinds of issues, particularly issues affecting crime and violence in the entire Caribbean. So Herb has graciously joined us. So he's aware of the topic. So continue. He'll join. I'm sure he has a bunch of questions to ask you. Go ahead, please.
Yes. So we are saying, if you have a private establishment, a hotel, that beach there that Puerto Rico own and operate, all right, a private establishment, I should think of the right to exclude who they want to exclude, all right, as long as I think it's not violating the Charter of Rights within the Constitution. I mean, it is morally wrong for them to do so because that means they're discriminating against Jamaicans. All right. So I don't support that move, but I suspect they are allowed to do so under, how their company, operates, or maybe it stipulates within their beach license. I don't know because these licenses are awarded by NEPA, and I don't know what is in those beach licenses when they get them. All right. But they can choose and let in who. And money has always been a way to restrict people. $3,000, who can afford that? To go inside here in Jamaica with minimum wage, what it is. So we don't, really, condone those kind of practices of restriction based upon, ethnicity, based upon race, based upon socioeconomic, status. We don't. Those are discriminatory, and they should not really be in Jamaica. But what empowers, companies to do that? I think many of that is within the coastal regulatory policies that we have in Jamaica. Because had we a general rights of access, the Jamaicans who wanted to access that beach on that particular day would not be excluded from it. They would freely go, being able to do so. Puerto Rico would not be able to build walls and block out the public. And that's what we're striving for. Fundamental change in the legislation that allow us general rights of access.
Okay. Well, let's stay with Puerto Rico for a bit here. And then I'm going to ask you to go beach by beach because you sent out something where you list a whole bunch of beaches and whether people had access or not. How is it that a government of the people, by the people, for the people in Jamaica could issue a license to a private person to operate a public beach with the caveat that they can exclude Jamaicans on certain days? Herb, what are your feelings about that?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, greetings to you, good sir. Sorry I wasn't able to get on earlier. Now, the bottom line is this. Whether it's caused in the earlier days by classism, racism, colorism, or whatever. That policy appears to have some degree of success for JTB because they want a certain exclusive group of people utilizing Jamaica's beaches. So, in order to combat folks like yourself and others, it appears as if they're playing the same game. Now, rather than play along, I have an interesting question. What would it take for, say, you to have your own company that invests in beaches in Jamaica and charge a nominal fee, which would cover maintenance and whatever else, uh, for, for Jamaicans to enjoy a very nice beach, to have like beach volleyball, to have different sporting events sponsored at the beach, soccer or football on the beach. Uh, all of these things are very appealing in the Olympics and in other sporting events in Latin America and the Caribbean. Why can't we do our own promotions and get around the government restrictions that are out there? And there are restrictions. They can't claim there are no restrictions. They are restricting regular Jamaican folk from utilizing the beaches.
So fundamentally, we need legislative change because if the framework, or not the framework, but the law basically does not give Jamaican general rights of access, then it doesn't. All right, and we always have to contend with that issue. So the fundamentals of the law must change. All right, for us to start buying beachfront property and then operating them at cost to Jamaican. I mean, I don't think those are sustainable, right? We really need the fundamental legislation to change because there's a number of issues that we're dealing with here. One is environmental. Beaches really do not need commercialization. Beaches need conservation. They're an important part of the biodiversity infrastructure that nature created that needs to actually stay a certain way. When we start dumping tons of concrete and start, changing the landscape, we get into all kind of climate issues. And we're seeing a lot of erosions. And we're seeing leakages that are happening and the coral reefs around Jamaica are dying. I know they love to think about that it's fisher folks that are over, fishing, but, spear fishers and the kind of fishing that we do in Jamaica cannot deplete the fishing stock to that extent. I think massive part of the problem that is happening is the commercialization that leaks a lot of things into the ocean is destroying the reef infrastructure. Hence, that's where we need the conservation. I think when we change the coastal spaces, though, or we are building infrastructure in the sea, there are actually hotels that are building rooms in the water. Building so close to the shore, destroying that real, sand dunes and all the vegetation, leading to erosions across the island. So while the way I use the space and the way I think beach spaces should use, they should really use as close to pristine as they are. What you need to build is to build it, 100 feet, 65 feet above the high water mark and land away from the beach. So that is one of the things that Jabem thinks, regarding conservation and preservation. That's what beach ecosystem needs. So getting around government policy is not going to be easy. What we really need is legislative changes. So the legislation says that we have the right of access, and then you put the necessary conservation efforts in place to then preserve and protect that space for generations. That's when beaches are very beautiful. When you go to a rustic beach, let's say you go to, Laughing Waters, all right? Or you go to like Winifred Beach, when you go to like Bob Marley Beach, when you go to these beaches up like in Long Bay that are untouched right now, you see the beauty and the majesty of nature. Compare when you go to a, doctor's, cave beach, or you go to a turtle beach in Ocherius. You go now, look at how Negril Beach is. Those are really destroyed ecosystems that are going to lead to fallouts, and that's why we really need environmental management of the space. And that's what I'll say to that response, is that conservation, that's what we need. Rights of access, that's what we need. Fundamental change in legislation, that's what we need.
Well,
So just a sec. So am I to understand then your major concern is more about the conservation and not actual access of regular Jamaicans to the beaches?
Yes, yes, we have a massive issue around access, and we have one around conservation, because what we see is commercialization that is destroying the ecosystem. And then we are seeing people not getting access for all what access brings. Okay, the right to practice your therapeutic, the right for your fishing, the right for your recreation, all those rights that you have are being violated because you don't have access. And we know it from this published work that when the people don't have access to these spaces, then we have environmental problem that goes, issue that goes on that we don't get to see and we don't get to correct. Okay, so we need those, really to really be foundation for that transformation that is required.
Here's Ratty.
yeah, Devon, the two main acts, and we touched on them. We didn't go. I mean, we can go really, really deep in them. The Beach Control Act and the Prescription Act. They're just act, but they're just words on a piece of paper. They have to be enforced, right? And then what I'm finding out is that we have so many agencies involved, and yeah, I want you to talk to that, because we have so many agencies involved. There's so much overlapping. There is so much redundancy, and at times the ball is dropped because it will appear as if everybody's looking at each other and say, no, you're a catch, you're a catch, you're a catch, and then the ball dropped, because we have we have something called the National Resource Conservation Authority, right? Then we have another one called the Recreational Development Corporation. Now another one called Tourism Product Development Company, and another one called Tourism Action Plan Limited. We have so many people involved, and the question is, who is really? If you have so many people involved, who's really in charge? Speak to us about that.
Yes, you're so right about that. All right. There's so much madness going on in here. You talk about, the NRCA, right, which is the National Resource Conservation Authority. Those guys are supposed to really be the regulatory arm, all right, of the Beach Control Act. So they're supposed to really make sure that what's in the Beach Control Act, is followed, right? But they are controlled by NEPA, all right? I mean, and then in the mix there, you have Town and Country Planning Authority, Land Development and Utilization Commission. All right, so all of these, falls under, I think, NEPA. But that's where the confusion is, because above NEPA now, NEPA sits in what we call now that super ministry, which is the Office of the Prime Minister, and it sits within the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. So this is an environmental agency that sits in economic growth and job creation. How could that be? So it cannot operate independently, and that's why we're having some massive environmental issue in Jamaica, because of how these groups or these regulatory bodies are structured. And then you talk about the tourism ministry, which under the tourism ministry, there are two private companies, basically. TPDCO, which is a tourism product development company, and the Tourism Enhancement Fund. And both of those actually, are involved in beach, what they call development. I do not like the word development. Mm-hmm. Beach is a natural phenomenon, so it cannot be developed. Okay, it needs conservation. And I just need people to understand that for a second. Beaches are natural resources. No man can make them. Even if you dump up and create artificial islands, okay, the ones that we do have naturally existing are creations of nature over millions of years of evolution on the earth. They are living ecosystem, and until we start seeing nature and the rights of nature to exist, then we are going to lose this battle of conservation, and we're going to lose ourselves because we are impacting significantly the biodiversity. So all these agencies are confusing, and they're jostling for control over the beaches. All right. So one of the things that happened over many years ago, right? Why the hotel industry really have so much power over beaches is that there has been a transfer of many of the beaches, okay, to a company, I think, called the Recreational Corporation of Jamaica, something to that end. And that company was created when Jamaica was going through a lot of restructuring back in the 80s. And a lot of the beaches were transferred into that company. And that company then was subsequently, controlled by it was in 1985, all right? And so the local governments, within the spaces used to control all of the beaches them in Jamaica before the government decided that they want to privatize these spaces, and they created this, this company, right? And they transfer many of these beaches in. It's called the Recreation and Development Corporation. They transfer many of them, established in 1989. They transfer many of the beaches inside here, and their job was to really divest the beaches, but it didn't work too well. So what they did now was to let the tourism ministry come and control the beaches. So tourism ministry control a lot of the beaches them in Jamaica. This is why you see TEF walking around saying that they're going to develop beaches in Jamaica. All right, you can't do that. These things need to sit within the NEPA, National Environmental Protection Agency for Conservation. All right, and then the NRCA now supposed to be the regulatory arm that makes sure that coastal policies are running good, beaches are upkept, look out for the erosion, kind of deal with the mitigation effort, replant back the vegetation and the space, kind of regulate how tourism, hotels are being built or close they are being built. And the beach access management plans talk about these kind of things inside here. It's not like the government don't recognize the problem, because the technocrats have pointed out the problems. And kudos to NEPA, I think, in some regards, for pointing out some of these issues. But I think NEPA is being held by the throat. It's held by the neck. And because it sits in that economic ministry, and the policy of the country now is to use beaches as an economic driving engine in the country, then NEPA's role now becomes one that rubber stamp things. So when the economic ministry says we need to build a new hotel here in this sensitive spot, they basically can't do it. They can't push back on it because that policy has been made by their boss. And so they're in a position that they're between a rock and a hard place, so they can't really do it. So we see that issue with even the extractive industry in bauxite mining. You have seen how many times they had to do some modification. I don't even know, maybe 100 or 200 times that they went in, NEPA says no, them refix it, them come back, NEPA says no. How many no's NEPAs have said, but finally it went through. The only reason why it went through because of what? It's interference by the economic ministry. But to say that, irregardless of the environmental impact, we think this is necessary for the generation of capital. So it must go through. We're going to get ourselves into some serious problem if we have that. Those regulatory ministry that you just talked about, we need to separate NEPA outside of that office of the Prime Minister. It needs to be its own entity, and it needs to give powers to regulate and protect Jamaica's national heritage.
No, going through some of my notes here, and it appears as if. Oh, by the way, for all of those who I've gotten some text messages who would like to call in. You can call in after 4:30, at or after 4:30, and then you have another chance. Once we finish up with those calls, you have another chance at 5:30. And Kevin, we can't say Herb. I don't know if Herb is still with us. Herb, are you still with us? No. All right. The Beach Control Act, in it was the creation of an entity called the Beach Control Authority, and they were initially responsible for taking care of the beaches. Then they said, well, the government really shouldn't be involved in this, at least not the central government. So then they kind of passed it on to the parish councils, and not much financing. Then when you had natural disasters like hurricanes and so on, they didn't have money to really fix up these things. So then they started talking about the Recreational Development Corporation, RDC, and then others, and then it ended up with the Tourism Action Plan Limited. And as you said before, and I'm reading here, it said it was intended that the management and development responsibilities for certain beaches would be divested by way of an instrument of lease offered to selected concessionaires. And the Tourism Action Plan Limited was given the responsibility to select the concessionaires after all the facilities had been advertised publicly. All plans were to be approved by the relevant agencies, and so far 2 beaches have been divested to date. So what it shows is that we had this law saying, you don't have any right. You don't have general rights, at least. You could have some historical rights, but then you'd have to prove it in court. And then we saw where it went from an agency created within the act to several different agencies, and then because of natural disasters and lack of financing, then it start getting parceled out. Some of them by parish councils, some to tourist industry, some here, some there. But as you said, they all fall under the umbrella of NEPA. But NEPA is powerless to really corral everything and said, okay, here is the one policy that we're going to have for beaches in Jamaica. What I want to throw out now is this, and this is quite interesting. There is, and we're talking about parish council, and some of them have issued development orders. And I know you don't like the word development because they say a beach, you can't develop a beach, right? But for example, in Trelawney, there's a development order 2015. It's policy SPC 13 of the Town and Country Planning, for those of you interested in finding it. States that the beaches listed in the appendix will be preserved for the purposes identified, and no permission will be given for any development or activity that will conflict with their use in any way. We don't know if they're following that, but that's what they said. Here's another one. It says, this one is for Negril and Green Island, another development order. It says the local planning authority will not grant permission for any development on land adjacent to the line of high water mark that would preclude general public access to and along the foreshore. So we see where at least on the local government level, we see where they're trying to at least put into plan legislation that will provide a benefit for the Jamaican public, in the sense that they will have general rights to these areas. The problem is these large developments, talking about like your Sandals and your Rios and all those, do we think that they're following this? And it brings me back to the Puerto Rico thing. How could the government issue to Mr. Kenny Benjamin a lease where he can exclude Jamaicans from coming onto the beach because he has set certain days aside for tourists? How? And I don't see a lawsuit. I don't see a lawsuit regarding that one. Talk to me, my brother. What do you think about local government passing these pieces of I don't know if they're recommendations.
No, they're not. They are gazetted, which means that they are approved plans by the government of Jamaica.
So why is it that we're not holding?
So it's not because it's local government means it's just restricted to that parish. It is part of the major part of the government that make what you just laid out there for, the old Green Island and Negril is also laid out for Ocho Rios area too. It's just totally disregard. This is why the Prime Minister's statement is disingenuous, because they gave all these permission despite the gazetted things that are really discussed in Parliament, stamped by Town and Country Planning, approved by all these ministers that says we're not going to do this. And then now comes in a developer that says we want to do this, and they disregard the whole thing, and there's no repercussion because what? We're all asleep.
Yes,
And so
indeed.
we are asleep, and there is no one in civil society that is actually taken to government. This is why Jabem takes a different approach. This is why we use the Prescription Act and entered into the courts, all right, with 2 of these cases to try to preserve them, because they were also on a protected order as well. And it's a total blatant disregard that the laws that even the government themselves set up, they are violating those same one. And nobody in civil society is ringing the alarm. And when you start ringing these bells, people say you're a troublemaker, because the Prime Minister came out when we did the protest in Bob Marley Beach and says we are mischief makers, we are false prophet, we are user of poor people. He used the language that was just baiting us up for just violence, okay? Because the language is almost like you're dissing the whole approach that is happening right here, and you need to go sit down, right? And all we are saying is that you can't block access to the Jamaican people. You buy your 200 acres of land, take your 200 acres of land and do what you want to do with it, but don't block us from using the beaches. Don't block us from accessing these spaces. So all that you just read out is written in, is gazetted. They agreed. They said windows to the sea. They said hotels cannot be built a certain height because people must be driving and be able to see the sea.
Yeah.
They have all those things written down.
I have that right here.
They just totally disregard it.
Yeah, here's public access. It says the authority also aimed to preserve the scenic beauty of the coastal drive by recommending that the height of fences between a road and the sea should be restricted to 4 feet 6 inches from ground level. But
you need to go to Mammy Bay and see the wall that they built around Mammy Bay Beach now. It is like a South African style wall.
Well,
to block you out.
Here it goes on to say, this is interesting. Development and subdivisions along the coast and riverbanks should be so designed as to allow the public to enjoy the seaside, the riverbanks, and the beaches. For that reason, special areas should be left for fishing beaches and for good bathing beaches with access provided from a public thoroughfare. In some areas, adequate parking may be required. They're not implementing this, and the government is just saying no. Before you come in, Ed, Herb, let me just say this: that one of the things that I really admire and I cherish about this program, and it's not me, it's all of us as family, is that we get to share ideas, we get to talk about issues, and then we get to come up with solutions. So we're pointing out all of the issues that we're having right now, and we're trying to come up with solutions. Let me just take the first phone call. Wait a minute, it's at 4:30, but this person want to jump the gun. So, yes, caller, go ahead. You're early, but go ahead.
Yes, caller, I'm just checking in on this, especially this regulation that you just read out, where they're not supposed to build to certain height. And I want to take a reference as to a building that is built in New York right here. There's a code. You're not supposed to build to a certain height. These people build this building like 14 stories above the height, and they'll have to take it down. That's the law.
Yes, I'm aware. I'm aware of that. Yeah, I'm aware.
You're aware of that.
Yes.
Okay. Now, another thing you were talking about, the violation, and I'm telling you, this government have no thoughts for, or you have only thoughts for few people, the rich, and he mentioned women and elderly people or children, but never I hardly hear them mention anything about disabled. This disabled is left behind, and I can't understand. And these are great human rights violations. Now, another topic. My brother, I can tell you of something because I even make my calls to. I try to reach out to you before because I'm looking some help to work on something into getting stop all this thing in Jamaica. Let me first say, I make my call to a certain entity and I mentioned the human rights violation in Jamaica, and they were alarmed. They were like, "What?" They said, "Do you talk to your MP about it?" I said, "No, they are a part of the problem too, not a part of the solution." And they was like, "What?" So they gave me the places that I can take my issues to and let them know to see if it can work on it. And they said there's something to be done. But I was trying to reach out to you and see if I can I need somebody to work with on this.
All right, caller. Here's what I suggest you do. Call me after the program, and then we can talk about that.
And this same number.
Yes, indeed.
All right, I will.
All right. Thanks so much.
Good, sir.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Oh, somebody else is. Yes, caller. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I am Jeffrey Tavares. Good afternoon, Mr. Ratigan, Dr. Taylor, and Sir Herb Nelson.
Yes, people's defender. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
Yes. When I was growing up in Negril, my family have beachfront property along the 7 Mile Beach. Some of them sell and some of them is still there. The people who helped raise me in Negril, they have a hotel there that is up for sale now. But why I called in is this. I remember when they had some red hot police, some tourist police came to Negril, beating people at the beach of Negril. All right? The government of the day allow the hoteliers to build wire fence and walls straight to the sea, the edge of the sea. We couldn't pass nor nothing. So we decided, no. We grew up in Negril. We put Jamaica on the map. We're not going to put up with this damn nonsense. So we decided, okay, we're going to take to the streets. Majority of the acts that Mr. Ratigan was reading out a while ago. Let me not call in the name, but there's a lot of licky and nyami politicians in this country who sell out the Jamaican people for 30 pieces of silver. You see? And now, I remember growing up, little boy, there is something they call cocoa plum. We used to go on the beach to have beach parties and volleyball, what Mr. Herb was saying. And what they did, they sell off that property to the people of the Vumbaba and the Vumbaville. Well, we can't access the beach anymore. We can't even have any party. There's an island off the coast of Negril named Bubiki. We can hardly go over there. It is owned by the Vumbaba and the Vumbaville of the naked beach in Negril.
Yep.
So what is going on, sir? And what Mr. Ratigan is saying is in fact truth. The government of Jamaica of the day don't care about the Jamaican people. All they care about when they can get under the table. And these are my views, not the views of Reggae Global Radio.
Okay. You have a question? You have a question for the good doctor?
The question I ask you, sir, what are we going to do about this now? If the Prime is going to come out and chat this nonsense, are we going to sue the hoteliers in Negril who build that we can't hardly them to the beach?
All right. Thanks for the question. The doctor will attend to that.
Okay, sir.
All right. Doc, before you answer that, I want you to weave that answer into what your organization and others have done with the two beaches, the two lawsuits that you mentioned, so that people can get a general view of what's being done at this point. It's just, you just now, it's not a bag of talk. You're actually doing something.
Yes. So we take that prescription act that you just talked about from 1882, and we start now to go into the courts to preserve what we can preserve. So any Jamaican beaches that are coming under risk right now of dispossession, of occupation, or to be sold, what Jabem does now is go in that space, talk to the ones in that space, and once we can see the evidence that validates their minimum of 20-year usage, then we go into the courts to seek a redress to protect them staying in that space. So, we have done that in Mammy Bay. We're doing that in Bob Marley Beach, and we are in the process of doing that for many other beaches. So we have a really skilled attorney, Dr. Marcus Goff, who is leading the legal fight in this direction. So we are using that tool, to protect the rights of Jamaicans, to really continue to use these spaces. We are open, right, that we can push for this legislative change. How that legislative change is going to happen is through people power. So part of the conversation that we're having right now is the advocacy. We're getting the education out there so Jamaicans understand how the law is working against their fundamental rights, okay, of accessing these spaces. And if these spaces are important to us, which they are, okay, they are our livelihood, our recreation, our therapy, they are treasures of the nation that cannot be owned, then the Jamaican people, we are educating, all of them to say, come along with us to push that legislative change. And there's different ways that we can do so. We have to make sure that the politician that we put in there, they, advocate for these changes or pull these changes through. Because, unlike some of the other democracies across the world, Jamaicans cannot directly, use any kind of lobby or any kind of direct instrument of change. So, for example, when you have like marijuana legalization law that happens across much of the states, it's done through ballot initiatives. So you could raise a ballot in the country to say that Jamaicans want general rights of access to use the sea, and then Jamaicans vote on that ballot initiative, and then it becomes law. Our democracy does not have that. We need to go through our politicians to enact that change. Mm-hmm. So we are dealing with the education to push for the legislative change. So we are doing something about it in the courts. So we will do that because the Beach Control Act and the government, they are the one who empower the hotels to do those buildings. So, I would have to be advised by an attorney, and we are happy that anyone with that kind of corporate law, commercial law, and environmental law understanding could advise us as to how directly we could lead suit against those establishments themselves. But for right now, some of the land, like the land in Mamabia that we're in the courts with right now, is actually private owned, a company called Riverland Holding and Cygnus Capital. Those are the ones that we're engaged in the courts to really protect that rights. But I want to go back to one of the questions one of your listeners raised about the demolition of structures that, kind of violate the code. That was done in Mexico too. Hotels were built on black people that should not have been built. The Mexican government demanded that it's been ripped down. So they took it down. They ripped it down. Jamaica would never do that. We have not seen that done in Jamaica. And your second caller talked about, the keys and the islands off Negril and who own them. It's the same thing happened in Montego Bay. In fact, one of the key of Montego Bay is called Sandals Key. So that island is owned by Sandals. The madness that is happening in Jamaica, it's crazy. So when your kids, my kids, and their kids come within the future space, that generation will be forever blocked out of these spaces. Can only go there if they have the capital, the money to do so, because these spaces are out of touch. This is why we want the population at home and in the diaspora to understand that we need fundamental change towards these legislation. We need them to change that we have the rights. We need that rights to access them, and they must be enshrined and constitutionally protected.
All right. Before you ask the good doctor a question, I have to ask him this because I see there's a bit of a chatter going on in the regarding this in the chat room.
Right.
Doc, let me just throw this out here. Somebody raised this issue. They said the opposing argument to your position is tourism, harassment, and safety, which has some truth to it. So how do you test the strength of that argument against what you're saying, and what are your recommendation solutions? They must say people can't walk the beach freely because the vendors and crooks and whatever them ply them trade on the beach, and so people don't feel free, they don't feel safe, especially when they come to Jamaica and the resort and stuff like that. So that's why they have to do that. What's your argument to that?
Well, first I'll start out that the Beach Control Act of 1956, I'd ask them if we had this crime and violence problem in Jamaica in 1956. The answer to that is no. So therefore, the legislation that were developed that are actually violating our rights were before we had this crime and violence problem. So therefore, it was not one of crime and violence prevention while these are in place. These were fundamentally in place to devoid, the freed people the rights to access their ecological heritage. So that is the fundamental basis in which that law is pretty much enshrined in. So we need to really be careful about bundling the issues here about the crime and violence problem that is happening not on beaches in Jamaica, but in the streets of Jamaica. And yet still people move around and people do their business. So what I'll say is that the rights of a people, all right, should not be violated because of security concerns. We are a smart enough, population to put the necessary safety measures in place. So if we are concerned that, crime and violence is going to happen on these beaches, then what we probably can do, we can put the necessary security infrastructure in place. All right, where we have access or the easement points, which ones would use to really enter on these beaches. We could have, community, of course, the communities that are in their community security points that members from the community would actually, check, against anyone that may be bringing in weaponry in there. All right, we could also have like what they'll have, like in country like the US, you would have park rangers, and park rangers are actually ones that goes around within parks, and beaches are also parks that then also make sure that the security is in place in these places. So we could put those security measures in place, and they would blend in with the population in the space. So basically, I'm saying put in security measures at the access points and along the beaches. But the fundamentals of the institution of the Beach Control Act was never a crime fighting tool. It was one to really exclude, to discriminate against Jamaicans. And we need to remove that. But I understand from a business perspective what they may be concerned about. And so we put that necessary security measures in place. And that's how I would see that we could do that. And, I'm not a security expert. That's more up your alley. You could actually add, to what we could actually do there to really mitigate some of those concerns.
I have an answer to that, but so is Herb too. So I'll let him take the floor now.
You're hitting on what I was saying earlier. There's a fear of our own people that they're uncontrollable. And I bring up what is it, Hellshire Beach out in St. Catherine, right? Because you used to have a lot of dances and used to have a lot of music at the beach. And, I think our people, so to speak, the public took that one over. But then the beach started having erosion problems and started disappearing. So maybe you can comment on the conditions at Hellshire Beach today. But the basic tenets of their good tourism program is exclusion. They see a need to exclude certain elements in the society because they fear those elements in society, and they fear that they're going to turn the beaches upside down. Of course, you have the women that come down, and you have the men that go looking for them, and they looking for those particular men out on the beaches. Well, that's not the thing. And whether it's privacy that they yearn for, to be able to do whatever they want to do out on the beach, that's another argument in itself. But the bottom line is there is a fear of elements in our population. And if we go back to what was said before, there may be 200 to 500 people in the population that will really fear and that have caused disturbances in the population. Kenny Benjamin himself, Puerto Rico, he's the head of guardsmen, marksmen. He has a new name for them today. But he's fully aware of what the security issues are. And to exclude members of the society and for the government to go along with that, um, you're just going to have to take the matter to court. There's no if and a buts to get around it. But I'd like to still get your opinion on the erosion and the development of the Hellshire Beach. Is that going to be recovered? And when it's recovered, is it going to be fully open again to the public?
So, so here is where we need NEPA to step up. All right. And I know they're looking at the issue of erosion. You know, erosions are, you know, can be attributed to man-made issues or just natural disasters. You know, hurricane comes in and they create a lot of havoc on the coastline, and it just never given the time to recover. And commercial events can also do that the way we build close to the coast. Now, as I said, you know, one of the framework that JABEM is proposing is that you have a coastal protection zone with a minimum of 60 feet above the high water mark, and that there is no building or construction that happen within 65 feet of the high water mark. Mm-hmm. What does that do? That allows the natural vegetation along the coast to stay intact and help to protect, you know, the coastal plain. Now, of course, there have been unregulated kind of development that happened within the Hellshire space, but that is also because government failed to do its regulatory job. And this is a problem that we're having where we need to have strong environmental regulation across the coastal space. So we need to empower these environmental agency. And I'm going back to NEPA because that's their remit. So when they saw aspects of this emerging, then they have the power to really close the space for rehabilitation, and we are supportive of that. And there are sensitive beaches also that are across Jamaica that we should not really be occupying because of the amount of, biodiversity that uses for home. So the restoration program would be something that NEPA would have to step into to say how we go about doing this. Is caused by, we have issues in the reefs. The wave that is coming in at a very, stronger current, and it's pulling off all the sand off the beach. So we need to put like buoys out there, or what we need to build in terms of infrastructure. We have seen they build some of those in Montego Bay and I think out in Rocky Point in St. Catherine, Clarendon there, to really kind of deal with the intensity of the wave that comes in that now create havoc on the coastal plain.
Are you referring to breakfronts? And what's the possibility of barrier reefs also, building up those reefs like an island?
So these are where the technical expert of the environmental, that's not my skill set, would come in to advise what is necessary to do that. Restorative work is also needed on the South Coast as well. So these are known issues that are happening there. So we need to empower these agencies to do that, and we're very supportive of that. When we talk about, because we're primarily in this for the rights of nature have its right to exist. And when we have these erosion taking place, all the fauna, all that, biodiversity that is on the shore is impacted, that then will impact, livelihood and lives. So we are very mindful of that. And I think part of the commercialization that is happening is changing the coastal geography. And what you may see played out in Hellshire may not have really started in Hellshire, but may have started elsewhere. And I could point to Myrtle Bank Hotel. You know about Myrtle Bank Hotel that was built in downtown Kingston?
Street. Yes.
What does Harbour Street look like now? There are palm trees and coconut trees and beautiful landscape in downtown Kingston. It's not there anymore. And that is because of just massive commercialization of the Kingston waterfront that create that problem. Massive pollution in Kingston Harbour, destruction of the mangrove forests along the Palisades and Gunboat, and all of those Raytown beaches that were out there. These are direct contribution from man-made intervention. And we're saying that it's going to happen along the North Coast if you don't rein in the amount of commercialization that is taking place there, because it has a direct impact on the environment. Beautiful Myrtle Bank Beach that was down there is all gone.
All right.
All commercial impact. Let me just go back to the security questions that deals with privacy and all that kind of things. As I said, I will only groan that the Beach Control Act of 56 was never a security arrangement. But what I'll say going forward, it would be we can work with stakeholders in saying that how we go about creating a security environment that so foreigners come to our country won't feel threatened. Published research have shown that all-inclusive resort drive anxiety in our country and have created some of these problems as well. If you look along the corridor in Montego Bay or coming into St. Anne, you do see some of these ghettos spawn as a result of all these all-inclusive that are developed along the coast. Because when they displace the folks that are using those space, they go up and they set up their informal settlement close to the hotels. All right. So we have to really invest in the social capital of the country as well. And we can put the necessary, infrastructure in where we have the easement point that the community use to access the beach that is staffed by securities from the community who knows the individual from the community. We make sure that the beaches have what would call, beach rangers, if we will, that are not only there for security of personnel, but also security of environment. And I think we can find a happy medium that can be realized.
I have a personal experience some years ago. When they had the Forum Hotel out by
Portmore.
Portmore.
Yeah.
Yeah, Portmore, yeah. We used to go to Port Henderson, which is what them call back road down that side. I went to Forum and we were playing football on the beach. And the security came and said, "No, you can't play." I said, "No, we have to come off." And we had to leave. So that's where we are. Now, Dr. Taylor, a couple of people wrote to me and them said, "Well, you should be the head of NEPA." So I don't know if the job is available, but people think you have the skill set.
Mr. Knight has been sitting in that position for probably more than 20 years.
And that's exactly what he's been doing, sitting. So, going back to the security piece, look, this police commissioner, he talks about transformation and he's big on stats. And like Herb said, if you look at the stats and say, okay, well, first of all, go back to the excellent point you made, that when the Beach Act came into effect, they didn't have this crime and violence problem. So it wasn't for that, right? It was to protect the influential. That's what it was from the masses. Second point is that there are ways that you could establish security areas around the beaches, so that you still can have people enjoying what they consider to be their natural resource, right? Without having the harassment and all these things that are going on. And we see it. It happens here it happens in Florida. You see it all over the world, right? Where they have beach patrols and so on and so forth. There are ways that you can do it. And especially since now we're moving to an intelligence-led police force. There are ways that you can, many, I don't even want to go into them now because the program is not about security, it's about beaches. But suffice it to say that the idea that if you strike a balance and say, well, tourist harassment and general access to beach by Jamaicans, no, we're rather deal with tourist harassment problem, and therefore we're going to do it at the expense of the people to have general access to their beaches. I don't think that's a good balancing act. It's not a balancing act at all.
Not equitable.
No. But let me ask you this. You sent out, I looked at a bunch of beaches. Some of the beaches, I'd never heard of them, believe me. Not to say I should have, because I spend most of my time in a town, and I used to go to St. Elizabeth and St. Anne, and boy, I couldn't wait for come back to Kingston because I like bright lights and big city, and I couldn't deal with the Peony Valley and the darkness, I tell you what, in St. Elizabeth, right, we used to, my folks, they come from a place called Warminster, used to call it Tantan Mountain, and our entertainment was just to sit on the veranda at night and look at the Alpart bauxite plant with the lights. We just sit down and just stare. I said, no, we can't deal with this. I have to go back to Kingston. But let me pull up the list of beaches, and I want you to walk us through, because I'm sure that many of our listeners, they don't know what's going on at these beaches, except here that it's closed or whatever. So let me pull up, oh, here we are. All right. The Prime Minister said that all Jamaicans must have access to our beautiful beaches. That is without question. But then I see 17 beaches here, and you explain, you and Advocates Network explain the issues. I'll take them one by one. Mommy Bay, what's going on with Mommy Bay in St. Anne?
So Mama Bay was a NEPA gazetted beach, code number MMM Beach 47. That means recognized by fisheries as a fishing and recreational beach. One of those gazette order that you just listed, it is listed in there. In 2020, and the alleged owner said, show up and said it's their property, fence it up, push the entire community off. Community don't have access there anymore. We're in the courts right now fighting to get back access. So that beach community has been displaced from. Community of Steertown and Mama Bay South have been displaced from that beach. So no longer have access to that.
Little Downs River Beach.
Little Downs River. So someone was shot on the roadside, 7 months ago, not on the premise, but on the road. They closed the beach, said that they have security concern, that there may be reprisal, that's going to happen down there. There's extortion, there's all kind of gangsterism going on Little Downs River. So as a result, we need to shut it down and, no conversation about when it will be opened, how it will be open, if it would be open. So for 7 months now, it's been closed. The fraternal ministers has written, the members of the Little Downs River community have written to NEPA, of UDC. It's a UDC owned space. No response have been given to the community there. That space was actually developed, cleaned up, put together by community members more than 50 years ago, when a lot of Rasta used to, roll along Lions Den along that old coastal space. So locked out a Little Downs River for 7 months now. No response from the government as to when that will open.
Blue Lagoon.
Blue Lagoon is a national monument, so it's been given that status, a couple of years ago, and so under that, the Jamaica National Heritage Trust have management rights for that space. 6 months ago, they said, okay, we need to close Blue Lagoons for formalization of all the vending that was going on there. It was unsavory. They needed also sanitary facilities in the space. It just couldn't continue to run the way it's run. They need to really kind of bring up the environments there. So it was supposed to be closed for 2 months. It's over 4 months overdue now. No communication really from the Jamaica National Heritage Trust until JABEM, along with the Portland Environmental Action. Big respect to all the ones from Portland, who have been working very hard, not only on beach right, but also water rights in Portland. We met with the Jamaica National Heritage Trust only to learn that of all the 200-300 acres of land that surrounds the Blue Lagoon, the government owns none of it. So all the government owns is just the Blue Lagoon and the road that leads to the Blue Lagoon. They don't own none of it. So they're in a struggle to find a place to put a bathroom so that they could open the place so people could go back down there. And they're thinking about not opening up until they can put a bathroom in place. So 6 months out, government have actually signed itself out of all its land rights around a national monument. Can you believe that?
You see what's coming? You see what's coming, right? You see what's coming?
Absolutely, of course.
Okay.
And to add that, it's TPDCO and the Jamaica National Heritage Trust is seeming to be in charge of that space. So they want to put office space inside here. So we do think they are moving towards a commercialization of the Blue Lagoon, and then a restriction as to who can go there and the number of people could go there, and hence that is why the Blue Lagoon is closed. So it's really a corruption. And we asked for scrutiny and we asked for this because the road closure there was not sanctioned by the parish council. I don't know who closed the road. There's a barrier at the Blue Lagoon that is maintained and paid for by private interests, and nobody can tell us who is paying the security guard that is holding the Blue Lagoon hostage. So what? A private security company is blocking the public access to a national monument. 6 months now. That's Blue Lagoon.
Oh boy. Peach Beach. I never heard of that beach.
Peach Beach is in Discovery Bay. Peach Beach is quote unquote owned by the Jamaican Red Cross. The Jamaican Red Cross, who's supposed to be, one of these international agencies that is all about what? The health of a people, the rights of a people. They have a lock on that facility and does not allow the public to use their property to access the beach. The community has been using the Fisherman Beach next door to access Peach Beach, but they can't walk across the land to get to Peach Beach. So a gate is locked, public is excluded in a restricted sense.
Reggae Beach.
Reggae Beach, right there and close to the border of St. and St. Mary, has been purchased, and I stand corrected if I'm wrong, by a Burrito group of companies. So what happened is that when a private entity buy the land that surrounds the beach, what they do, they run their wire fence. Once they run their wire fence, then what? We are restricted. So this beach is in the process of being privatized. So unless proactively the government act to say that people have been using it for more than 20 years, then we cannot get our rights to access it. So it's going to be privatized.
Yeah, let me just say to our radio listeners, not the ones watching the stream, that go to the streaming platform, because this is so interesting. We're not gonna take a break. We're gonna go right through the commercial break on the radio side. Did I say Members Beach? Did I ask about Members Beach?
No, you didn't mention member. Can you hear me correctly? Because I got to plug my phone in.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So Members Beach is also in Discovery Bay. So that's kind of like a struggle between one person who think that they own Members Beach and some members who are mainly a lot of returning residents who purchase houses within the Discovery Bay area can no longer access or struggling to access Members Beach because this one property owner thinks that they own it. So they lock the gate and the residents have to go there, rip the lock off to get access because they said that they bought the land surrounding Members Beach. So they want to privatize Members Beach and lock those individuals out.
Okay. There's a beach east of Roxborough in St. Anne. It says you're privatized.
Okay. Yes. So that's another beach that has been bought by private interests, and that is right in the contiguity of the whole Miami Bay to Ocho stretch. That's, I think, is like 100 and something acres. So it's another beach that is going to be privatized because land rights. When you're owner of the land that adjoins the beach, that means you run your wire fence, you lock people out. So the folks that are in civil rights are protesting that they're going to lose access to that beach.
UDC Beach.
Okay, so the UDC controls the entire stretch once you pass Old Fort Bay all the way into the Ocho. So Pearly Beach and Laughing Waters and Dunn's River, all of that space is owned by UDC. UDC recently have transferred a property, I think it's around 35 acres to Czech. That's what we call Brownlow Beach in Steertown. That's another one of the beaches that Steertown and Miami Bay use. And that land is now privatized. So the community, they dumped up the gate, they nailed private signs on the gate and locked the community out so no one can access that UDC beach already. It is now in private hands and the public cannot access it.
Old Steamer Beach.
Old Steamer is down there in Hanover. Now, that is a strange situation, right? So it has been used by the community for gazillions of years, all right? But what we're seeing happening right now is that the land that surrounds Old Steamer's Beach is privately owned. And TEF recently went in to say that, okay, we're going to, uplift this beach because I don't like the development story. They put garbage receptacle in and they wanted to put other stuff in, but they can't continue because the ownership of the land is in limbo. That was recently published in the Jamaica Gleaner because the government of Jamaica do not own the land that surrounds Old Steamer's Beach. It's private property. So therefore, if you don't manage that carefully, all right, or the public do not go into court for under prescriptive rights, we're going to lose access to all steamers because, again, and you will see the theme keep going on. No land rights, no beach access. It is the case of Steamers Beach.
Long Bay Beach.
Long Beach now, beautiful stretch of beach in Portland. That beach is wide open, but all the lands around Long Bay is now being bought up. Okay, so big respect to all the ones out in Long Bay that are now marking the easement points onto the beach in Long Bay because the privatization of all the properties along Long Bay is happening. We know of many of the foreign interests that we wish not to name here who have procured some of those lands around Long Bay Beach. So those access points will be shut down if the community does not exercise their prescriptive right, demonstrating that they have been using them to access the beach in 20 years. Then because of those private land laws, we will lose access to Long Bay Beach.
Is there anything you want to add regarding Bob Marley Beach?
Bob Marley Beach is in the courts. And what I want to add to folks is that the government says that they have no intention of, closing Bob Marley Beach. And I say to the government, you don't need to have no intention of closing Bob Marley Beach because the government do not own any of the lands surrounding Bob Marley Beach. That old Sugarloaf Mountain is very important to Rastafari heritage. It is one of the spaces where the first Nyabingi temple tabernacle was created in that space. The government owned none of the land. So the group that owned most of the property around Bob Marley Beach is a company called Wolf Group Limited. And at any time, Wolf could fence that off and block the public out. Now we have them in the courts, and then there's also an injunction filed for one of the property there by Norman Stevenson Roba, who is the son of Bongo Gabi. And Bongo Gabi is one of the ancient Rastafari who really held that space for many, many years. That case is in the Supreme Court, and that case, I'm asking the public to reach out to support that fight, because if we lose that fight, it further empowers the Wolf Group Limited to fence and lock the community out of that space. So we are still under threat until we can secure the prescriptive right of access to Bob Marley Beach. Then we are not safe.
Bluefields Beach.
Bluefield Beach is in the courts. Big up to my brethren, Wally Christoph, who is in the courts in Bluefields against a property owner down there who, wanted, that was in the news as well, that wants to really push the community off, a significant component of the Bluefield Beach. And so the Bluefield Beach community filed prescription act, enter into the parish court, and that case is ongoing. If the developer wins that case, then the community would have lost a significant part of the Bluefield Beach. So that's a prescriptive law case that is in the courts in Westmoreland.
Little Bay Beach.
Little Bay. Now look at Little Bay, right? That was massive in the media out there. And the Prime Minister himself went down there and tell the people them that you will have to leave these beach land. So that's some massive property. I think it's over 800 acres of beachfront property down there. Those folks have been living on that property for eons. All right. And what does that mean? If those folks lose access to all those lands because the developer wants to really put in hotel infrastructure, hotel development in that space as public knowledge in the news, then the community and Jamaica would lose access to Little Bay Beach because of land privatization.
I'm struck by the Prime Minister's instruction to those folks, because given, again, his statement that all Jamaicans must have access to our beautiful beaches. This is without question, It didn't say what beaches, which one of them am I talking about? And it just seemed contradictory that you would have him telling people that really have to leave instead of trying to work out an agreement through whatever organization so that people can remain on, as you would say, land of that they consider birthright, the ability to use the foreshore, otherwise known as the beach.
But that land rights, my brother, once you lose land rights, you see all these beaches we're talking about is all around land rights. You lose the land rights, you don't fly, you can't jump, you have to walk, okay, over land. And once you lose land rights, you lose access.
Right. Unless a former tourism director, I spoke to him this week in preparation for our interview, and he said, you know, it's ridiculous, it's ludicrous, but he said one of the solutions is if you can get a boat and then you approach it from sea, then you're fine. But him say you can't.
Not necessarily, not necessarily.
Well, that's
Based
true
upon
because
275
eh,
lease. Okay, we can talk
we
about
could talk
that.
about that under the act itself. Yeah, it talks about how far out you can go and all that. So, but let me just finish up with the beaches here. Um, Alligator Pond, St. Elizabeth, Manchester area. Carolyn, this is for you. And in fact, before you answer that question, let me see what she mentioned. She mentioned something here earlier that, uh, yeah, she said beach cottage owners in Treasure Beach tried ownership of the beaches also. But the community stood up and let them know the beaches are a public area to be used by the public, so they stepped back.
And that's what we are doing, all right. But what we need to make sure we have the courts recognize our rights, because they will try again and they will try again.
Okay.
I could tell you it's the case of Mame Bay that they have been trying since the 50s to displace the communities from that space. They will never give up until they kick you out. So what is really happening in Alligator Pond, again, it's another story around land rights, where that property was well documented in CVM news clip, in a two-part series that shows that the property that really adjoins that beach with a river that runs out, and there are some Jamaicans who have their commercial, activity going on there, learned about that through the news that the property was up for sale. Once the property is up for sale, they will lose their land rights and they no longer can walk over that land to access that beach down there in Alligator Pond. And so you will lose the beach. Now, as I said, prescription law, 20 years minimum, they meet that criteria, we can protect it, but it's under threat. And so this is why we have developed a legal defense fund that we are saying that all of these spaces that are under threat, we can really source attorneys to protect the public access.
Maybe this is something that the diaspora, all of you diasporans out there listening, this is something that we should all jump on board with, because it affects, if it doesn't affect you personally, it affects somebody or it will affect your children or your children's children. And at the end of the day, our peace at a rock. I mean, this is where we come from. When people think about going home, this is where they think about going. So this is something that I think we should really, really support. Old Para.
So Old Para again was in the news, St. Thomas. And lo and behold, who owned all the lands around Old Para Beach is one of our famous Jamaican ministers, Pernell Charles. Pernell Charles owned our claim to the community, really pushed back at that and saying that he does not own those properties. I don't know, maybe some couple thousands of acres of land. And so therefore, by, exerting their muscle, the community protested and saying that, no, we're not leaving. There's fishing beach out there. You cannot displace us. But again, the question is land rights. If you control the land rights around the beaches, then you, according to the laws of Jamaica, have the right to run your wire fence. Now, the Jamaican public, the Old Para community, would have to go into the courts to have their rights recognized by the courts. So you see that undue burden that the Jamaican people have to deal with. And this is why we are saying that the legislation have to change. And this is why we're saying that the Prime Minister made a disingenuous remark, because he have all this power in all this instrument of the law that he could, with his ministers and their overwhelming majority in Parliament, to say that under the Land Acquisition Act, that we're going to create easement over all these spaces to protect the public, and on top of that, we're going to repeal and replace the Beach Control Act of 1956 with a modern and more progressive legislation and allow Jamaican general rights. Then we no longer have this question. No more conflict between property owners and people. No more that we have to find lawyers and pay lawyers and countless number of hours in the court system over a resource that is said to be owned by the crown.
Maybe we should
Just wanted to interject, Ratty. Dr. Taylor, um, how much corruption is involved when you look at the fact that it was just the North Coast and then out west with Negril and around to St. Elizabeth, Black River area, that was really being developed. And now that the emphasis is on Eastern Jamaica, did these ministers run and grab property out in Eastern Jamaica because they knew the government's intent to develop Eastern Jamaica? You have other people like Lee Chin in Portland and other big time investors that went and grabbed certain land rights. Is this something that the Kenny Benjamin and the rest of them, is there a nexus to the government declaring the development of Eastern Jamaica and all of these folks going out and grabbing property rights from them?
So, my brother, I have no internal information on that, but we can see a trend in that. We could see the North Coast Highway being expanded.
Yeah.
All that is projected for St. Thomas, and all that they said are going to be developed in St. Thomas. The general public, those are not published information that the general public would know well in advance as to what's coming. But the private sector, would know, and the government was always inviting investors, as they would say. So they would be able to pitch these advanced, government massive infrastructural project to them, and so they would procure them. I mean, listen, there is a lot of government ministers, I think, that own coastal properties in Jamaica, all right? And I think the media in Jamaica, if it's really want to do scrutiny, should start looking into this. And they bury the names in companies after companies. And when you check, it's company A, and then company A is not, the owner of company A is not vested in Jamaica. So you have to go into a foreign space to really find out who is behind these things. And some of these is around properties in Blue Lagoon. You can't find out some of the people who own them because it's buried in companies layers deep. And I suspect that is the case all across Jamaica. Big swaths of lands in along the coast in Westmoreland is owned by single entities, and I think what you're going to see on the St. Thomas side is the same development, is the same kind of people. We saw that the Saudis were invited in to invest in Jamaica, come along the coastline of Jamaica. So the people of Jamaica is being, as one of my fisherman brethren says, they are de-developing the people out of development. Mm-hmm. And it's very profound, understanding that from a brethren. Big respect, Dino, you know what I mean, for making those statements, because they observe it over many years that they have spent. Nobody come in to try to develop fisheries in Jamaica. There's tremendous amount of opportunities in fisheries, wide open sea fisheries. In places like California, they are creating, artificial reefs, 50, 100 miles out into the sea that grows copious amount of fish. And that has been, projects that are going across the world. It's part of the kind of like a blue revolution out there. And we can do that. The amount of mariculture that is going on in many other countries, it's just a lot. The ocean is 70% of the surface of the earth. So we can farm it and do it in a sustainable way. And really, these are high-tech jobs for our people. It's not low-tech job where you're going into hotel to do those low-tech positions. We're talking about, dealing with chemical, understanding salinity, understanding how you operate in DC environment, understand how you sustainable, procreate rare fish breeds and grow various species of seaweeds for consumption. It's really a sophisticated high-tech space that we could invest in the development and training of our people, being an island nation. And we're not doing it. Instead, we choose to do low-wage, kind of a all-inclusive tourism product. But let's finish the list of beaches here, my brother Ratigan.
I think
you have
here, Burwood.
So Burwood is another one. Burwood is in Trelawney. Do you believe that the government do not own the land that surround Burwood? It's privately owned. The government said they owned a strip before that land. but you have to get over the private land to
To get to
get
the
to
strip.
the part that the government says is owned. So that's a struggle. And those people who own the Burwood Beach are exerting and flexing their muscle. And I suspect there's going to be fight coming. So we're going to need prescriptive right, or the government is after stepped in with its land acquisition policy to protect the public interest. So that is a precarious position that could trigger beach access loss.
Winifred Beach.
Winifred is safe. Winifred went into the court several years ago and won, through prescription right, or won the right to really stay there in perpetuity. They cannot displace Winifred. What they do own are all the lands around Winifred. So the government, through TEF, tried to flex its muscle to come in and put a management system in place. But the Winifred community is very advanced. Kudos to all, the Winifred Beach Benevolent Society and Portland environmental activists who are very engaged there. They have very advanced plans that are very sustainable. That beach is such a community beach. You go there, there's farmers market. You could go there, you could buy all produce. There's craft, there's vending. Big up yourself, Cynthia. They just really run that space efficiently as a community effort. And that's what, when they did that Recreation Development Corporation, the parish council should have engaged all the coastal communities and have them take over the management of the beaches instead of looking for divestment. That's where you introduce the people to really kind of protecting their spaces that our government have failed to do, failed to empower people to really take charge of their own destiny. And what we see is happening at Winifred is a model that can be proliferated across the country. It's not blocking any hotel development. It's saying that these resources stay in the hands of the people, train the people how to manage their resources environmentally, economically, sustainably. And I think we have a happy medium.
Let me ask
There's
you.
one
No, go
mention
ahead.
that was not on the list, and somebody emailed us that, and that's Point Hill Beach in Westmoreland. The individual said it's owned by Petrojam and it's in a precarious position and they don't have access to it. So that's Point Hill Beach in Westmoreland. And I'm sure there are many more across the country. And we have gone into the rivers.
No. You know what? We have thrown out about 18 beaches to you, and you came up with Point Hill, right? About 19. And as you said, it's a common theme: land ownership. Now, you'd think that the government, any government, every government of Jamaica would see this, just as we're discussing it right now. And so I'm trying to think, why is it that they haven't done anything? Now, Winifred Beach, as you said, it's safe. Is it possible, is Jabem thinking of using the Winifred model to do like a class action for all the other beaches instead of doing it individually? To do just a class action and just get one court order that will affect all of these communities?
Yes, absolutely. We are actually, in that process of, figuring out how to get that done. So, the legal advice is under consideration as how to take this as an entire case in the defense of Jamaican beach access as a whole. We would like it not to go there. Would like the government to come to their senses and address it legislatively in the interest of the nation. And I think an opportunity presents itself here in terms of Jamaica moving to a republic, and significant modification needs to be done to the Constitution of Jamaica. While they announced the Constitutional Committee, that I do not think is totally reflective of an environmental view, of a Pan-Africanist view, and most of what I do see there that constitute that council seems to really kind of lean on the side of a model that I fear will be a repeat of the 1962 Jamaica. I'm hopeful that we can push back, that these things be constitutionally enshrined. There is a provision in the Charter of Rights that says that Jamaica have the right to ecological heritage, rights to its ecological heritage. Now that needs to be also flushed out and tested in the courts as to what truly constitute ecological heritage, which we think beach and rivers are all part of it. And so under those clauses, there are openings to actually approach the case from that perspective. But, one of the things that when Jabem, speaks to ones who says, how can I help? We embrace legal muscle and people who may have advanced understanding as to some of the ways how to do these things. And so we encourage ones to engage us if you know how to get some of these things done, because we are a small nimble organization, not even a year old as yet, still developing, still finding our feet, but we're not waiting. We're using all the legal tools on the ground to start to protect what we can protect and open that a change is going to happen with the help of all who are listening right now. Don't feel like you don't have any power. You have the power. You have the power to put pressure on the system to change. Your vote matters. And so when you go to vote, you need to vote for the ones who have your interests at heart. And I said, this is not only a question about beach access. And some people might say, oh, I don't use the beach. I don't swim. I don't do this. The churches use the beaches for baptism. Okay? Fisher folks use it for their livelihood. People use it for therapeutic nature. All right. I mean, people use it to collect beads for, just economics of it. All right. I mean, so we need to understand that this is a solidarity issue. It's not one that I don't use it, so I don't business with it. No, listen, I'm an organ donor. Okay. And I donate blood. I mean, these are things I do for solidarity. So if someone meets in an accident and need a pint of blood, I mean, who's going to give it to them when they need it? So you participate in these acts of solidarity in the society that you live in. So even though something is not directly impacting you right now, you can contribute your support towards it. Your family member, who may have diabetes for 20 years, have lost the function of their kidney and need a kidney transplant. I mean, so you offer up yourself that if I meet in an accident and I die, but my organs are good, they're able to give it to that person. So we have to really think about the greater good of society here. So this is an issue around immorality that we need through solidarity to contribute towards. There is no way that discrimination of access and the lack of land rights should prevent a people from enjoying the resource of their country. I mean, too much privation is happening along the coast and we are losing access, and it's going to get worse.
All right. Let me just say that if you have a phone call, you can make it in another 4 minutes or so. You can start making the phone calls. Herb?
Yeah, it's amazing that this particular political party in power has not taken any action whatsoever. Now that we are well aware of the ecological and the other political occurrences over the years that have denied residents or denied people in general the rights of access to these beaches. Now, if the other party comes to power, what are the things that they would need to concentrate on to effectively make the change? Or do you believe that the private sector, the powers in the private sector, will still be required to be taken to court to effectively make these changes? Or you think the government still has the power to do it?
The government always have the power to do so. All right. So it is
without going to court.
Without going to court, they don't need to go.
Yeah, they don't need to go to court.
No, they have the power to do it. So and I'm sure that I don't know all the tools that they have, but there's one tool. All right. First of all, the government can declare that they need to just repeal the Beach Control Act of 1956 and all those clause new document that says Jamaicans have general rights of access to beaches and rivers. All right, and Jabem have proposed a framework to do so. It's on our website, a broad framework that they need to embrace. So once they make that legislative change, then when you approach a property to use the beach, they can't deny you. To follow up on that, the government can mandate through the Land Acquisition Act, right? Easement over, properties, let's say every 100 feet, an easement is created. So, the folks, the Jamaicans can access the beach. This is within the power of the government. I mean, the government can commandeer any land they want to. That's clear in that act, and they have done it. It's not like they have not done it. Right now, the case that is in Bulago, that they say they don't have anywhere to build a bathroom, it is so silly. And you know why it's so silly? There is already a bathroom facility within 50 feet of the lagoon that the community has been using for over 30 years. If you go to Jabem, you will see I have on Instagram. You will see someone went behind there and took pictures, and we published those pictures. All they need to do is to take down the barrier that's there, and the bathroom is right there for them to use. The government, in a stroke of a pen, because the act is clear that if it's in the public good and it's a national monument, they could have that done in a matter of weeks. So the next administration, if they decide, if they get into power, and let me kind of position this, because while it is a political issue, it is not a partisan issue, and I need to be clear to the Jamaican people about that. We are not for one party or for another party. However, what we'll say in us shedding light on this issue right now, we have identified that the economic policy of the current government, the status quo of the current government, it is not to grant Jamaican general rights of access to the foreshore. That is very clear. They have actually said it at the United Nations that they are not going to mandate easement over private land because it's going to lead to a constitutional crisis, which is a lie. Number two, they said they reserve the right to create a balance between beach access and economic development. And there is the problem, because in fact, what they're saying is that the two are mutually exclusive, that Jamaicans cannot be on the same beach as tourism. So they have made their position very clear. And I participated in that United Nations meeting. So I'm not making this thing up. I was there. I heard it with my own ears, okay? Because I wrote to the United Nations that this was a discriminatory behavior, okay? And the rapporteur from the United Nations asked the Jamaica government about that, and the Jamaica government gave their response. They reserve the right to strike a balance between economic development and beach access. What that balance is so far is an exclusion of Jamaican from that course. So that was clear. The question was asked about easement, and they said they to do that would lead to a constitutional crisis. It's actually on tape, so you could go to the CERD, which is the Committee on the Eradication of Racial Discrimination, and search for the Jamaica presentation there, and you will hear that with your own ears. What the opposition have said, and what they have said in their policy, overall big picture policy at their party conference, was that anything that Jamaica have and share with the world, Jamaica should have access to it. So just to put a balanced view out there. So what they're saying into that, I hope it translates into, they have reached a point right now that they are willing to really embrace general rights of access. And that's, if I interpret it correctly, they are saying that in their position. Now, will they do it when they come into power, or will the special, oligarchs and the special interests prevent them from doing it? Because they were the one in 2000 who came up with the first beach access management policy, which they stated a lot of this, and they were in power for God knows 16 years, and they did not get it done. Now it has come and it's raised its head from civil society like Jabem. I'm hoping now that they have reached to the point that they realize that this is an immorality, it is an injustice, And so it needs to get done.
Let me just say
You,
this.
you mentioned Blue Lagoon in particular, and looking at Blue Lagoon, is the water actually coming from a power plant discharge?
No. Mm-mm.
And the other thing that was mentioned was the carcasses of dead animals and the dumping area for old cars and you know materials that people discard was in the area. Is that being cleared up?
No, no, there's no such thing like that. The water from the lagoon comes from us. There's a spring. There's a freshwater spring that is in the area of the lagoon, and also the salt water from the sea. So it's a mix of salt and fresh water. Has a lot of historical significance to the Maroons. I mean, there are a lot of history that comes out of the Maroons in that area, that Grande Nanny, and the Maroon people, their spirituality that they practice in that space. And they too are locked out. It is a very beautiful, natural, spot. You should check it out. I mean, every time, I go there, it's very, very beautiful. There's no dumping of anything or carcasses that are in the Blue Lagoon.
All right,
Very
hold on.
pristine.
Hold on, Doc. Let me take this call.
Okay,
Caller,
I got
go
you.
ahead, please.
Yes, good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm here listening to the gentleman talking about the beach. Now, I'm appalled, and I think that this is purposely orchestrated to cut out the Jamaican citizens. And common sense can tell you that if they are purchasing the land with, which will surround the beach, and when the structures are built, of course, you won't have sight of it unless you are there. And I'm thinking that I don't know what manner of earthling our PM is, because in my opinion, he's acting like the Romans back in the days of Hannibal, when they came out of their caves in the mountains and went down to terrorize the cities around them for what they have.
You have a question?
You
You
know?
have a question for the good doctor? You have a question for the doctor?
I don't really have a question because I clearly state what is happening. The only thing I can say is we here in the diaspora and they in Jamaica hope they can come to their senses and fight for their rights. It's not easy, but you can't give up.
And it's being done. It's being done.
Yes, and clearly this is a motion of colonialism again. And it's a shame. This cannot happen in Barbados at all.
We'll get to that before. We have a few minutes left, but we'll get
I
to
know.
other Caribbean islands.
Yes.
So we'll
Thank
talk
you
later.
so much for taking the call. Yes.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Anytime. Doc, I'm going through an article here, and it says that one of the possible avenues to address this issue is through the European Commission for Human Rights. I don't know if your folks are thinking about that, but before you make a comment, several people have reached out to me asking how can they contact you. His name is Dr. Devon Taylor, Devon Taylor. He's the president of Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement. That's Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement, otherwise known as JABEM, JABBEM. He can be reached at 876-293-5835. Again, his number is 876-293-5835, and his email address is info.jabem. That's info.jabem@gmail.com. Let me repeat that one more time. Dr. Devon Taylor, president of the Jamaica Beach Birthright Environmental Movement, otherwise known as JABEM. Telephone number 876-293-5835. And his email address is info.jabbem, JABBEM, @gmail.com. Go ahead, Doc. Wait, you want to respond to what?
Yes, and we can also be reached on social media at Instagram at Jabem, or we're at Twitter at DBEM_JA. And of course, our website is jabem.org. Now, in terms of the
Doc, let me stop you.
European
One
Commission-
question. I just want to make this point before you move on. Because Herbert said, I'd ask a question, what can the government do? And you were saying they can do something immediately. They can do something right now. And Herb, there's, and for the listening audience who didn't hear this before, the Beach Control Act of 1956 That's the act that governs most of what we're discussing today. And the doc is calling for a complete repeal of this and to bring something new and progressive. But even under this act, under Section 7, 7 under the title is Protected Areas. 7, number 4, it says the minister, not the government, the minister may, if he thinks fit, grant to any person applying therefore in such form and subject to such conditions as the minister may think fit, a license to carry on in any area defined in an order made under this section any prohibited activity specified in such order. So, what this is, what all the things that this says you can't do, the minister with the stroke of a pen, he can say, go ahead and do it. The minister, not the government.
Which specify which minister?
All right.
It doesn't say.
That's a really good question.
It doesn't say which
Let's-
minister. It doesn't say which minister because this was written way back when before this was written before Jamaica got its independence, but it's still being used. It's still being used. So we have to find out which minister has control over the beaches.
Yes, it is a good question because right now should be so the NRCA is the regulatory arm of this document, and the NRCA is actually a department within NEPA. NEPA sits in the office of the Prime Minister, right? Now, in the office of the Prime Minister, there are also several ministers without portfolio. Okay, so you have the and then before this, NEPA was sitting in the Ministry of Economic Development and Job Creation, and I think that is Samuda's who's a minister without portfolio ministry. Now, I am also really confused about that. Who is the head of the office of the Prime Minister? The Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister.
So if I'm reading this correctly, then if NEPA falls within the office of the Prime Minister, then this would be the remit of the Prime Minister.
Exactly.
And somebody need to clarify that to me, because if the Prime Minister is saying that we must have access, and then he has all these powers as the Prime Minister, but also the head of NEPA and the head of all of those agencies, then the man is saying that what he can do and he's not doing it. So I don't know. I mean, is the guy schizophrenic or something? I mean, it's like he's saying one thing that he can do, but he's not doing it. I can't figure it out. This is the conundrum. This is the madness. And I'm asking my people to put the partisan politics aside and look at this and say, brethren, I feel where island that, we used to play upon them beach, run upon them beach, and enjoy them beach. And we cannot put that aside to say that do the right thing, get this done, or get out of our way. Okay? We need it. We have to have access to it. I don't think you will have any tourist that is going to come to Jamaica that says, me no want to on no beach with no Jamaican. You know why? Why do they come to Jamaica? Why they didn't go to Venezuela, or they didn't go to Barbados or Aruba? Why they come to Jamaica? They come to Jamaica because of our culture, because of the beauty of the island, because of what Jamaican, the power of our culture as really the people centered in that. We are the drivers of that, and the beauty of the land cannot be separated from its people. And so we are the drivers of all that is Jamaica. And then you are inviting people to come and excluding us. Don't drive. Discriminatory, and we need to fix it.
Let me just say one thing before I jump on her. One quick thing here. Yeah, I went back and I looked at the Beach Control Act of 1956 and the definition. And it defines the minister. And you know who the minister is? It says the minister means the minister responsible for beach control. And by the chart that you just described, since there's no one in charge of it, and NEPA falls under the office of the Prime Minister, right, and you have several ministers there, it would seem as if he would take primacy over this, and he should be the one to say, okay, you know what, with the stroke of a pen, I'm going to say, you know what, Jamaicans, everybody, you have a general rights to access all beaches in Jamaica. And that would have been that based on, because this is still in effect. So that would be it.
It is?
It's still in effect. So you don't even need to, this needs to go because we have some problems with this too. But before you do that, he could simply sign under this, the beach Control Act of 1956 and give everybody rights. And you're right. For him now to turn around and say, well, every Jamaican should have access to the beach. I said, yeah, you can give them. Why don't you give it to them?
There you go.
Go ahead, Herb.
Yeah, I was about to say, just looking at this thing, Barbados, all beaches are public, and beachfront resorts are required to provide public access points to the waterfront, right? Now, we know who runs Barbados, Mia Mottley, right? She's been very outstanding and a stand-up prime minister within CARICOM. I mean, surely this prime minister must realize that he represents all the people and not just the people with the money. Not Kenny Benjamin, not our friend that from Canada who's a multi-billionaire, not any of these folks, all Jamaicans. So the bottom line is giving access to the beach. They build up this mistrust of certain parts of the population, right? And they make it seem as if our people cannot be trusted. And then people in the diaspora who don't know better, one of the articles I looked at for this program said a family came down. They said there's 500 miles of beachfront in Jamaica. And they drove for days trying to get admission into a beach that didn't cost an arm and a leg, and one that they could get into and enjoy themselves. But most of the places they went to was unkept and dirty. So my thing is, why are there areas that are unkept and dirty if you're going to allow public access?
Before you answer that, we have a caller. Caller, go ahead, please.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening to
Good
your
evening.
panel.
Good evening.
I must say I like to watch the programs that you and Lonesome and Jeffrey, you guys, you're great. Just listening to this program, it really makes me sink in a hole. Just thinking of, native Jamaicans cannot access, the natural free resources that the country has. And to know that the people who are supposedly, employed by us sitting in the parliament, they are not even doing their jobs to even be aware that there is such an outdated law, a law that can really work against the citizens. Now, it's a sad day for Jamaica, and us Jamaicans, when we can settle for mediocrity. We can sit back and say it doesn't make sense to fight. We actually need to get up and fight because everything is being taken away from us. I grew up in Jamaica. I am now living in the States, probably 5 years ago. I had the liberty where I could go to any beach in Jamaica, anywhere. I pull up on the roadside and I go to anywhere the beach is, I could walk on the property and do it. Now, the children there and their grandchildren, their children will not have that liberty, will not have the ability to walk onto a nice beach. What is left? Riffraff, the honeycomb rocks, the stony sand and water that nobody can enjoy. People might think that this is politics, but it is not. From my perspective, Jamaicans will need to fight. Because you know what? All the fight, Ratigan, I see is coming from the diaspora. It's us, the Jamaicans that are abroad looking back home. We are the ones fighting for home. Our fellow families and Jamaicans back home. I don't know, they lack it. What is it that they're not getting? That they need to get up and stand up. Because if they don't, what's going to happen, Ratigan? What is going to happen? Right. This place that we love, look behind you. That zinc fence, it speaks so loudly to me. I am not from the garrison, but I'm from a country place up in St. Mary, and I know what poverty is. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have that kind of zinc fence, but I can resonate with you. I
Right.
went to Kingston, it's a school in the 80s. I went to Woolmer's Boys. I know all of these things. But, you know, not to go away from all of this, I have to lift my hat to you, sir. I mean,
Thanks.
you and your panel and Make We Talk and Rain Lonesome and all the other freedom fighters, because I don't see you guys as bloggers. And I just hope that these programs, these messages that you're pushing, gentlemen, it reaches far. You know what I'm saying? I hope it reaches far because you have given me hope. I'm telling you that. You
Well,
have given me and my family hope. I have a wife and kids in this house who is like, Daddy, forget about Jamaica. That is a lost cause. But because of watching you guys lately, getting them involved with watching you guys lately, there has been a turnaround in my household. And I really hope that this can be multiplied in Jamaica where people can. I mean, gentlemen, keep informing us because I just learned some things from you today in respect of
okay.
the access
All
to
right.
beach. I didn't know that we had a group or an organization in Jamaica that
Well,
oversaw these kind of processes.
well, look.
And,
Well,
and, and it needs to be known.
well,
Jamaicans need to know.
well. Look. Thanks for the call.
Everybody needs to know.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for the support. And keep
Yes, man.
watching. Let me jump on and take another call here.
Respect, man.
All right, my
Over.
brethren. Yes, caller. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Ratigan, I don't really want to talk on the here. I want to talk to you regarding something.
Okay. Well, call me after the program. Call me in about 15 minutes, please.
On the same number?
This same number. Yes.
All right,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Doc Herb. We only have a few minutes left, but
Yeah.
you were about to say something.
Yeah, so the brethren who just call, I mean, we hear them in passion play all the while, and we says action time now. So what we would like the diaspora to do is to get involved, and there's several ways that we think you can get involved.
Please go
I
ahead.
mean, yeah, you can join Jabem. Just go to jabem.org and join the movement. All right. I mean, let us know your skill set and how you can contribute. All right. So that's one thing you can do there. All right. And
Doc,
they
hold that
spread
point
the
for me,
info.
please. Hold that point for me, please. Let me just take this. Caller, go ahead. We don't have much time, but the doc is available.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna keep it. I'm gonna keep it real quick here. So I don't know why the government is hell bent on tourism dollars because, as we know, most of tourism dollars don't come to Jamaica. I think the government gets about 7.5% off the revenue of it, and all it does for Jamaica is create low-paying type of like sweatshop type of jobs. That's what it does. It doesn't really do anything for Jamaica. But and another thing that Nigel Clark goes around and he brags about it. Low self-esteem Nigel Clark, who thinks he's inferior to Mr. Golden because he's calling the guy Massa. But let me ask the guest the question. I know time is limited.
Yes.
Why? Okay. Well, the question is for you, Mr. Ratigan. Why don't you get Mark Golden on and have him speak to this matter? Because your guest said that they were in office for 16 or 18 years and they didn't know a damn thing about it.
Well,
So why don't we get him on?
it's funny you asked that question because Mark was supposed to be here today, but due to other commitments, so I'm trying to get him on for next week Saturday. I was trying to get him on with the doc today so that the question you're posing to me, the doc would pose it to him. But they said no, he's not available, so they're trying to get him on next week. Maybe I'll have the doc come back next week and ask him
Please,
himself.
please
Anytime,
have the
brother,
doc come
anytime.
back because I go to Sandals all the time. I haven't gone since the COVID, and those people locals don't have any access to the beach stuff. It's all blocked out by walls.
Right.
So if you could bring him back and bring your guests back on, and let's start asking Mark Golden about these questions because they're in office for 18 years. Okay, and they didn't do a damn thing about it too, like the guest said. So, I mean, I know the time is limited. Thank you very much for taking my
Thanks
call.
for the call. Thanks for the call. I suspect that what Marco said that he hasn't been in office for 18 years. But the point, the critical question that we can ask him is, what's your plan going forward? Should you be the next government? But putting that aside, please go ahead, gentlemen.
Yeah, so what I was saying to like the ones here who just said he goes to sandals. I mean, one of the things that Jabem is developing is saying to the diaspora, you can exert your power because the way how we actually, took down apartheid is by economics. You know what I mean? When these sanctions start come in, then they learn. So when I go to Jamaica, of course, I have, my family home there. I live there. I own property in Jamaica. You know what I mean? I don't stay at these places. I stay at my house. All right. So I would say you avoid resorts that don't allow Jamaicans to use the beach. You know what I mean? You could start there. That is in your power. That's something that you can do right now. I say you join Jabem. Okay. You come on board, you help us to advocate, you spread this information around. The advocacy that we're doing in terms of political pressure and public education, you tell your friend who tell their friend who tell their friend. You spread that word. You post it on your social media. You get it out there. All right. The other thing that Jabem needs is Jabem needs donation to help fund these legal battles and what we're gearing up to do. We'd like to do more on the advocacy in terms of putting even ads in newspapers. You know, when we do these protests across the island, we make T-shirts and we make banners and we do all these kind of things. You can get involved. We have a GoFundMe set up. All right. That you can actually give us some of your pennies. You know what I mean? It's called the One Love Jamaica Beach Access Defense Fund. That is on GoFundMe. So you can go there and you could donate for us.
Say that again.
We
Say
have a
that again.
petition.
Say that again, please, so that slowly, so that they can whoever is writing down can write it.
Yeah, so it's the One Love Jamaica Beach Access Defense Fund. One Love Jamaica Beach Access Defense Fund. That's on GoFundMe. You can go there and you can make a donation. All right. We are asking you to really spread the word. Okay. You know, be an advocate. You know, let us know what your skill sets are. You know, we are in need of graphical artists to help us kind of build out, you know, our social media platform. So you could volunteer there. If you have, you know, good organization skill, you could volunteer there. If you are an attorney, I mean, you can volunteer there as well. So this is what we want people to really kind of get engaged in terms of helping us. Put it on your TikTok. You know, subscribe to us on Jabem Instagram or our Twitter page. You know, help us to really get the message out there. Call back home, talk to your folks. Let us know if your beaches are at risk. Reach out to Jabem. You know, we are at info.jabem@gmail.com. All right, or just go to www.jabem.org and you will find us there. We have a petition out there, and the petition is actually geared towards the Prime Minister, gears towards the Governor General, and gears towards the King of England, because they said the foreshore that you mentioned, which is that wet sand and the floor of the sea, is vested in the crown. The crown is the crown, that the Governor General is the representative for the King in Jamaica. So I think the crown can play a role in this madness too.
Exactly.
So we are sending the petition to all of them. And so that petition is really protect beach access for all Jamaicans. And that is on change.org. The one thing that I'll say to my fellow ones who go to sign this petition, change.org might ask you to chip in a donation. You should not chip in any donation at change.org. Donation that is made at change.org do not come to Jabem. They keep that revenue. But donation that go to the GoFundMe, it comes directly to Jabem. And they only take a very small cents they take out of it. So you really get like 90-something% of the money that you donate. They do take a small administrative fee, but most of it comes here. So it's best to do the donation at the One Love Jamaica Beach Access Defense Fund, not at change.org. Change.org, you just go there, you sign the petition, and you leave. So the petition is protect beach access for all Jamaicans. You go there, you do that, and you join us, and you spread the word, and you be serious about taking this, following this issue. Because one thing that they're open is that we let it go.
Yeah.
They're open that we walk away. That's what they're open. And with your help, we will have the stamina to make this wrong right, not for ourselves alone, but for the generation that's ahead of us. This is an immoral issue, and we are witnessing one of the greatest transfer of our ecological heritage to the rich and the powerful. That is what is happening. All of these coastal land and all of its economic benefits is being transferred. And what is going to happen is that we're going to have ecological destruction in the space. We have seen it with Myrtle Bank Hotel downtown, and then they're going to walk away and left us with a destroyed coast in Jamaica. So we need to ask for NEPA to be removed from the office of the Prime Minister and be an independent agency to do the necessary conservation work for Jamaica. Join JABEM. We are about advocacy, the rights of nature to be protected, and for the real rights of Jamaica to access their beaches and their rivers and to use the sea. Get on board. This is a fight for all Jamaicans.
Amen, amen, amen. Herb?
The one last thing I'd like you to speak to is there a projection of the sea reclaiming annually?
We have less than a minute.
How many yards of the coastline are we looking at per annum that the sea is reclaiming currently in Jamaica?
So I don't have that answer for you, but I could definitely, look it up, or we could request that information from NEPA and get that to you. But we are in the climate change era, and climate mitigations are necessary. And this is why, we're interested in starting a JABEM youth core in the school. So ones who are actually interested in that can get on board, because this education needs to be very early and get out there as the need to protect this space. But we'll look into that for you, Irvin.
All right, listen, Dr. Devon Taylor, thank you for coming along, my brother. We've benefited greatly just by your presence. And we're going to support your initiative. And we hope to have you back maybe next week if I can get the leader of the opposition to come on so you can throw the hard questions at him, so that I can kind of like just sit back and watch what's going on. So until next time, take care of yourself, my brother.
Yeah,
Be
man.
well.
Blessed love to all of your listeners too. It was great. All right, one love.
All right.
Honesty, and you say honesty. Honesty, and you say honesty. Honesty, and you say